Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? I have a very special guest today. It's actually my grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Denison. How would somebody introduce you? Like, what was your official title? How would somebody, I guess, when you saw somebody in the barracks or something, how would they have addressed you?
Well, I was in for 24 years.
Right.
And so starting out, I was just airman, Denison, just like everybody else. And I was enlisted for 5 years, and I was trained in rescue and survival. And I was stationed initially from basic training to Reno, Nevada, Stead Air Force Base, which isn't there anymore. But it was the official school for survival training for aircrew members to teach them how to live in an environment where if they got shot down or had limited or something, and they learned an awful lot from World War II when I was a kid, of course, but from World War II and then going into Korea, that when the airmen that got shot down or had to crash land or go into foreign territory didn't know what to do, a lot of them. And so they formed a school, or was forming a school of trainees. So they interviewed me in basic training and said, have you ever done this, camped out overnight by yourself, and have you started a fire and built a fire and cooked outside? Things that weren't mandatory unless you were probably a Boy Scout or something, which I was not an official Boy Scout. I did. My neighbor with me, lived next door to me, and we decided we would be our own Boy Scouts, and we did that up in the trees. And then another friend of mine would go out and build fires, safety fires.
Let's go back to that. Let's go back to like your childhood and stuff. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
I was born in Fresno, California, the central part of the state, and in 1935. So
I guess we should mention that you just had your 90th birthday a few days ago. Congratulations!
It was
quite the milestone. 90 years old.
Yeah, it was a milestone. I found out I had more children than I thought I had. Adopted stepchildren and everything. But anyway, from 41 to 45, of course, was World War II, and the only thing we had back then in World War II, the news. There was no TV, of course, and the news you got either sitting in front of a radio, which was twice as big, with a speaker about 6 inches square, listening to the news and any war news. And so I was 5, 6, 7 years old when I'm listening to the war news. And then every Saturday morning, my sister and I would go to the movie to watch the cartoons, and there would always be a flash of world news on there, and you'd see some of the war stuff on there. And then, of course, we took the Japanese people into concentration camps, which I thought was a little bit overdone. Even back then, when I was 6 or 7 years old, we had relatives in Sacramento, which was about a 3-hour drive from Fresno in those old cars. And we would drive from Fresno to Sacramento along the highway there and look into the concentration camp there in Stockton.
Really? Wow.
I would see these kids standing there at the barbed wire fence, looking out, going, "Why are we here?" And I said, "I don't know, and I don't think you should be there."
Right.
But even back then, I felt we were doing something wrong. And yet, on one side of you're trying to believe the government saying they have to do this to keep the Chinese or the Japanese spies out, so they want you to learn to hate the Japanese, and I never did, and now nobody does,
right,
really. But anyway, that was my introduction to war. you might say. And so, as I grew older, of course, and at the end of World War II, in 1946, then, my dad, who worked for Del Monte Foods, was transferred to San Diego as a sales representative. So we moved to San Diego.
For Del Monte Fruits, you said?
Del Monte Foods, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was raised on canned goods because our garage was always filled with dented cans because they had to pick up from the stores when they get dented. If somebody goes into the store to buy a can of green beans, they're not going to take the dented cans. They're going to take all the others first. Right. So the store would give them back to Del Monte, and my dad was.
That reminds me of a movie, Big Daddy, with Adam Sandler. Did you ever see it?
Yeah, I think so.
He would take the cans and dent them because they was like 10 cents off or whatever. So he's teaching the kid, like grab the can and dent them. So he had this little kid on the cart throwing the cans down. But anyways, continue.
Well, that's all right. But we got our dented cans. So anything Del Monte put in a can, which back then was coffee or all the vegetables, because it was all grown. The produce was grown in Central California,
right,
in the Fresno, Stockton, Tulare area there, and so that's where the main offices for Del Monte, of course, was in San Francisco area up there, and we'd go up there as a kid. I remember going up with my dad. He'd go to meetings, and my mother and my sister and I would go Chinatown or during the wharf or walk all that, which was really nice back in the 40s. Things have kind of changed, I guess, in San Francisco, but
to say the least.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I grew up. Then in San Diego, we were 4 blocks from the ocean, where my dad had a house built. So I spent my spare time at the beach.
Which beach was that?
Pacific Beach.
Pacific PB, yeah.
Yeah. It was the only high school there was La Jolla High School, which of course my sister and I went to, and it was a big high school. But we went to PB Elementary when I got there, and my sister went to PB Junior High. Then the next year, a year and a half later, I went to PB Junior High, and junior high was 7, 8, 9, and then only school you could go to then in the area was La Jolla.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from La Jolla in 1963. Is that right? Yeah, we started.
How much time did you spend at the beach?
1953. I'm sorry.
Did you guys just spend all your time at the beach, or what did you guys usually do for fun?
I spent a lot of time at the beach, but all through junior high school, I had a main job of delivering papers to San Diego Tribune, Union Tribune, and the Morning Union and the Evening Union. For a couple of years, I did the evening paper. So as soon as you get back from school, get home from school, you'd have a bundle of paper sitting there by your front porch, and you had your rubber bands and everything, and you wrapped your papers and stuffed the bags in your bicycle and took off and delivered the papers. And then my neighbor, who was a year ahead of me, had the afternoon run, and you can't really go to La Jolla High School without a car to get you to school in the morning, and there were no buses. So he says, I can't keep my morning route and get to high school on time. So we went to the paper, and he said, here's my Tribune route to give somebody, and I'll take his morning route. It was the same area, same streets, almost the same houses. And so I did that for the last third year.
Did you get paid like per paper?
You kind of did, depending on how many customers you had.
Do you remember how much you were making at the time?
Not so much, but I had 130 customers.
Okay.
And you didn't make that much money, but the hardest part about it was that they didn't have billing and things like they do now, where people get a bill either on their internet or in the mail or whatever. What we had to do was every month, the first of the month, we had to go collect the money. from the people. And most of the time, after you finished your route or you got out of school, then you had to go around with your little notebook there with everybody's name on a receipt and how much they paid. It wasn't very much, so you had to turn in all that money right away. And sometimes people, I swear, sometimes people would be hiding when you came to collect, or they weren't home. They were working or whatever they were doing.
They're like, oh shit, that kid's here. The newspaper kid's here.
But here comes the paper boy. You got the money.
We owe him $2.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't even close to that. It was, but
they'd have to make out a check for 56 cents.
Well, they paid cash most of the time because it was usually just over $1. I think, for a month. $1.30 or something. I those are numbers to remember, but I can't remember what they were. But I worked ever since I could remember, even before we left Fresno, mowing lawns and things. Because I always had a job. Because I had a goal in my mind, even back then, that I wanted a car. And so I saved my money up until that time, and I was in junior high and was getting ready to go to high school, and I was 14 in between.
What car were you eyeing up?
I was looking for anything back then, but...
So what year would that have been?
Well...
So that was...
49 is when I went to high school, I guess. So it's been 40. We moved there in 46.
Just for reference, I'm going to pull this up for the listener or the watchers. This is what the cars would have looked like back then. Woody would have been sweet.
Yeah, my first car, it was a 39 two-door sedan.
All right, let's look it up. Plymouth?
Plymouth, 39 Plymouth, two-door sedan.
What year? Sorry.
39. 1939.
That thing's sick. I mean, these are all... What color was it?
It was a gray.
Like this gray right here?
Yeah, kind of that black.
This is like kind of like a resto mod.
Yeah. It's just gray. It was a two-door sedan.
Yeah. That's like, grease, hot rod, you know?
Well, the Plymouth had a four-cylinder. It wasn't very powerful, but it was all I could afford. And I bought it at 13 and a half because the legal law in California then was 14. So I wanted to have a license by the time I was 14 to have a car. So my dad took me down on my 14th birthday, which was October, whatever, and 49, and sat down to take the test and started filling it out. And the guy looked over there and he said, "Oh, wait a minute." He says, "You're." It was on my 14th birthday. He says, "You're only 14." I said, "Well, yeah, that's what the law says." He says, "It did say that till the 1st of October, which was 9 days before my birthday." I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "They changed the law in California to 16 before you could drive." I was floored. Here, I had a car and no driver's license.
Yeah.
And I couldn't drive it legally. So
you just had to stare at the car in the driveway? Or?
Well, no, we went home, and my mother said, "Well, I need a car for running around and stuff." So she helped me maintain it, and they let me drive it on the weekends to the grocery store and to my girlfriend's house and stuff, where we weren't supposed to do that, but this is way back when, and there's hardly any traffic or anything, and I never did anything wrong. But my next car was going to be my favorite car, and I was going to have it when I was 16, and that was a 41 Ford, which was a very popular car for the era. And so I gave my mother the 39 Plymouth and bought a 41 Ford two-door sedan 6 months before my 16th birthday.
What color was that one?
Blue.
Oh, yeah. Is this the same car that you found in the barn?
No, that was a different model, but it was a 41 Ford
Okay.
V8. Yeah, it was the same engine, same transmission, same all of that, but it was a two-door sedan, and that was a club coupe. So
That's a great looking car right there. Like that's super cool.
Still is, and that's pretty much what it looked like when I got done with it. Except this has got too much chrome on it. Because what the thing back then was no chrome. Everything let it in. The hood let it in. The trunk let it in. Everything let it in, except of course the door handles. White wall tires on 616 tires, which were relatively cheap back then.
And what engine was in that one?
A V8.
Okay, yeah. That was the flathead, yeah.
V8, yeah.
Which I think it was a V8, but it still only made like 60 horsepower or something.
No, it made a little better than that.
Was it? Let me see. Yeah, let me see. 90. Yeah, so that's pretty good for a little two-door coupe.
That was good enough to...
I don't know, I guess it depends on how much lead you put all over it.
Well, no, I don't think that made much difference.
I know, I'm just kidding.
To open the trunk, you go inside the car to the back seat. Behind the back seat was a lever. You pull that up, and it pops the trunk open because you had to let it all in.
Okay.
No chrome, there's no handle or anything.
Right.
Anyway, so I got that car, and I got it all ready to go, all painted up, all ready to go when I turned 16. My dad took me back down there the same day, did the test and went on a drive, came back, said, here you are. I carried that license, California license, all the way through the service, all the way for years, because that was always my permanent home address. But
did you get more paper route, like more papers to deliver then?
No, I had given that up. You couldn't deliver papers in a car. You couldn't.
That was cheating.
Or a motorcycle or a motorbike or anything like that.
Really?
Yeah, it was illegal. Bicycle or walking. It's the only way you could do it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is back then.
Right.
But at 16, I already had two jobs. When I was 15, I worked for a Food Basket, a market there, because they opened a brand new market there in Pacific Beach. And they were going to be the first ones with this new procedure that they hired what they called bag boys or box boys. And you were to stand there and help the people load the bags or boxes with, because they didn't have carts then. And you loaded the bags up with their groceries as they're paying for them, and then you carried them out to the car for them.
How did they carry the groceries in the store before? Like before
in the bag, they carried the bags.
Oh, I see.
This is going to be something new.
I didn't even realize. Like I had never even thought about pre-shopping cart days.
Yeah, and that's what this is going to be the first one, and it was the first one in Southern California that I know of that was hired this thing to have box boys carry your groceries out to your car, help you put them in, help you put them in the bag, put them whatever.
And they'd throw you a quarter or something. If you were lucky.
No, you were paid.
Oh, okay.
You were paid by the grocery store. That's why I say it was going to be one of the first ones. This was an innovative thing. And we were supposed to make, I think it was $1 an hour, which was, you're going to work Saturdays and Sundays and that was pretty much it, the weekends, because that's when people expected it was going to happen. This is going to be brand new. So I had that when I bought the car. So I had a job, and then when I turned 16, I had an offer to work at a gas station down from a couple of blocks down from my house. And I said, what a great place to work. Serve gas.
I would much rather work at, a gas station.
Well, yeah, because you could change your own oil there in a gas station. You got a discount on your gas, and you just worked there all the time. but you could only work when you're out of school or in the summertime or whatever. And then a little bit later on, when I was going to high school then, and I had the car and could get there, then I went to work for a pharmacy, and I would do two things. I was either a cashier at the pharmacy there, because we were the only place in town that carried the racetrack at Torrey Pines. There, the horse racing was there every year. We carried the only racing form. You could come into a drugstore and buy the racing form. So that's what you were doing on Saturday morning, was selling racing forms to people. But
like for gambling?
Well, no, they were the racing forms telling which horses were racing.
Oh, I see.
The gambling was all done at the racetrack.
Right.
But the people that had horses there came from up the road just a little bit, a place called Hollywood, and they had movie actors and all of that.
Mm-hmm. I think I know the place.
And they came down on Saturdays and stayed at the La Valencia Hotel, which was the main hotel in La Jolla. And they would come over in the morning and get their racing forms. And
so you would meet all kinds of celebrities.
You'd see them, yeah. You didn't know them sometimes because they just got out of bed or something. But I can't remember one time when a big movie star came in. God, I never thought I'd forget her name, but she came in with an old sweater around her and no makeup and pimples and everything. And I couldn't believe who it was when she first got in there. Then I realized who it was. And then she went over to we had a soda fountain, of course, that was the thing. And the gal that was working the soda fountain that morning, she sort of says, "You know who that was?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, she wasn't as pretty as she is in the movies. I said, "Yeah."
I don't think you had to be back then, because like the cameras weren't that great, and especially the TV, like it was black and white, right?
But the famous movie stars, if they were famous, was who they were, and Lucille Ball used to come in there, and she was pretty famous because she was nasty. She was always mean to the pharmacist, not giving her what she wanted or something. I used to hear them arguing back there in the pharmacy area. Anyway, so I had that job until I graduated from high school, and I played football in high school because you want to play sports. Back then, you wanted to be in some kind of sports, at least I did. And I had to quit football because I got what my wife just went through, a case of bronchitis. And if you have bronchitis, you can't participate in that. And the doctors would not let me play football in my senior year. So I still lettered in it, but I didn't play that much. But anyway, but that was my childhood. And then I went to San Diego State. I applied to 2 colleges because I was going to be a pre-dental student. I don't know why, but that's what my mother wanted me to be, I guess. But I applied to two colleges in LA, one UCLA and one at USC. And I was accepted to USC, but not accepted to UCLA. I don't know why, but UCLA was a state college and USC was a private college. And the cost of going to one of those schools was 10 times more than the other school. And my dad told me, if you really want to go to college, he didn't really think much of it, but he said, if you want to go to college, I will furnish you room and board. Means you can live at home.
Right.
Or if I was going to live someplace else, or I'd have to get a scholarship or something.
Right.
But
so you were limited to the San Diego schools.
Yeah, because that wouldn't pay for my gas, my clothes, my books, volume. But San Diego State, I would pay my own way. I wasn't that expensive, and I had a place to live.
Can't beat that.
So I went to college there, and after the first year, I went, I don't think this is really for me, because I wasn't learning anything, and some of the stuff they were teaching, I swear to God, I already heard it in high school and already learned it. I thought the chemistry class in college was 10 years behind the chemistry class I had in high school, which you memorized every everything there was. That iron was ferrous, and the different names of sodium, chloride was salt. All those types of things. They didn't even go that far. So anyway, in my second year, I was still under the draft for Korea, but I had guys that were there that I was meeting that were in my fraternity and stuff. They were guys coming back out from the service, going to school on the GI Bill, which was paying for everything. They were in the service, and some were married and had children. And I said, that's what my girlfriend, who ended up being my first wife, we met in the 9th grade, I think, or 10th grade, I guess. But we wanted to go on with life, and so I said, I'll just join the service and get it out of the way, come back to school on a GI Bill, and raise a family and go from there. Well, I got in the service and realized that college was a waste of my time anyway. So, and I got into the service, and they picked me out. I don't know how many people to go into the training course for survival and rescue training at Reno, Nevada State Air Force Base. And they told me in basic training, the only thing that would get you out of there was cadets, which was a 18-month. You had to be 19 and a half years old, and it was an 18-month course. You'd come out as a pilot.
Could we back up just a second? So when you were a kid, you had seen in you said Sacramento or San Francisco or somewhere that you had seen the concentration camps from
in Stockton.
In Stockton from World War II. Or when you were thinking about enlisting, do you remember thinking like, man, if our government was like doing that and like putting people in concentration camps here, like, do I want like anything to do, or was that just not even like?
It wasn't even a thought, because they let them out as soon as the war kind of ended, and then ever since then there's been a disagreement whether it ever should have been done. And I'm still kind of cracked in the middle between, should you put people that might be Japanese spies, because that's what got us into Pearl Harbor, or were you more concerned about the kids being in concentration camps when they shouldn't have been, or the families? But at that time, it was all over, and it had been for years, and I just said, okay, that's what happened. Because World War II was really the last war we've been in.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, because everything after that was not a war. And so when I went into, even the Korean War was not really a war, because it was between North and South Korea. And getting ahead a little bit, Vietnam was not a war. It was a conflict between North and South Vietnam. And a global war has to be between two countries.
Right.
Like Japan and America, or Germany or France, Germany tried to conquer the world. That's what Russia's trying to do now, I feel, to a certain extent.
I feel like they've been trying to do that. Because wasn't Russia supporting the South in Vietnam? Was it the South that they were supporting? Because the United States fought for the North, right? Or do I have that?
No, we haven't. We fought for the South.
Okay, we fought for the South.
Russia, I don't think, was really concerned about Vietnam.
Okay. For some reason, I had thought that
China supported North Vietnam. Red China. Well, China's the same thing. It's North and South China. I've been to all of it, and I don't. I haven't found anything I like about North China, except some of the things they make, I guess. But going back.
So during the Vietnam War, the Soviet Union provided crucial military and economic aid to North Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They've always been on the opposite
side.
Yeah.
Because.
And now you got Trump trying to be friends with the guy. He's like, oh, well, not to get into current politics, but I remember Trump saying something like he's going to end that war. Like the day he gets in, and then here we are. It's like, yeah, you think you're gonna just tell a dictator over there that? Because when did Putin get in? Putin was probably still the dictator back in Vietnam probably when he was younger, right? Or no?
Well, I don't know how far back he goes, but it's always been pretty much communism versus non-communism,
Right.
Or like we have this country it's not a democracy; it's a republic in a democracy. So if you have dictatorship, then you can't have a dictatorship and democracy. They don't go together. That's why we have a big problem now. And we have a war developing in Russia and what's the other place?
Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's between two countries.
Mm-hmm.
Although Russia still thinks Ukraine's part of their country.
Right.
But between Russia and, let's say, England, or between Germany and
It's
England.
always against Russia, it seems, right?
No, Russia wasn't. Russia wanted the world too, just like Germany did, but they didn't feel they were in a position to be Hitler. So Germany wanted to conquer the world,
Mm-hmm.
and when they gave up World War II, of course, when we beat them, they didn't start the war to be with us, against us. They wanted it against England and France and Germany and Europe. They wanted all of Europe, including England. And we stepped in then when the Japanese, who also Japanese didn't want to conquer the world. The Japanese wanted the Philippines more than anything, and they wanted most of Southeast Asia. They wanted to control that for food. They didn't want to have a war with us, but they had to be concerned about the Pacific Fleet supporting the rest of the world. So they said, take out the American Pacific Fleet, take away those battleships and all of that, then we can have our part of the world to ourselves.
Boy, that didn't work out for them,
No,
did
it didn't work out at all for them. But that's kind of like what started the war with Japan, with us. Now you're country to country. And just like Germany was to England, France, and Spain, and the rest of that. And that there's part of Europe, though, like Norway and Sweden and Switzerland and all those, didn't even get in the war, didn't get involved in it.
At least not directly. I'm sure they're...
there was, but they were neutral.
Right.
They weren't going to fight for either one, but they didn't have the armies to do it. So
But anyways, let's get back to, I guess, right after you got enlisted.
Yeah, then they gave me that job, and so I went in the service in November of '54, and went through training, and I graduated in around June of '55. I was a certified instructor in survival training, and also a rescue specialist, climbing rocks and rescuing people and stuff. So I decided it was time to get married, like we talked about way back when we were 19 and stuff. Anyway, so I got married and took my brand new wife to Reno, Nevada, where our son was born in '56. And he had some problems, and the service couldn't provide the help it needed, and nothing around. The service didn't have any medical facilities, and they didn't have any civilian facilities around that could handle it, because it was a kind of a rare thing. They said, but they sent us to Balboa Station in San Diego to see that if the doctors could help us there, because that was close to our home anyway. And they said no, they couldn't, but they could supply a name of a doctor in L.A. This was back in '56, and so we went up there, and the doctor said, and at that time in 1957, the service was coming out with something called Champus, and it was going up until that time. The service did not pay for anything you did in a civilian hospital. Didn't pay for anything, nothing. So they weren't going to help me at all with what I had with my son. In other words, I had to pay for his birth and his hospitalization initially. Then I could put him in a military hospital, except I wasn't close to one. They sent me to Balboa because they had a big naval facility there. They found the doctor in L.A. And that December, he was born in August, and so that December, the military was coming out with this thing called Champus, where the military would pay for anything. If you were in the service, they would pay for anything required of your family, which was births and deaths and anything. So
I feel like that's pretty fair for going and risking your life.
It was just till 1957 before they'd do anything about it. But now, if had I been close to a base when he was born, they would have taken care of it at the base. But the closest base was over 100 miles away. Anyway, so we went up there and talked to Dr. Powell, and he said, if the Air Force or Army or anybody will pay me anything, this kid needs this surgery. If they pay me anything, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. But it's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be over a period of years and stuff. So I went back and I said, okay, we're going to take care of it. So I got transferred down to Southern California. And down there, I was the only survival instructor. They were just forming a survival school for the B-52s and 97s and everything that was stationed there in March. And that's how I got that job. And then during that, we also would send us on rescue missions, because there was no rescue in the Sheriff's Department in Riverside, California. There was no Sheriff's Department in Loma, anywhere around.
Oh, really? So you were doing local rescue?
Yeah, because we had to, because they didn't have any. Back then, they did not have what they have today.
They would send in the military, essentially,
because we said we had a rescue school. They called us one night about, 9 o'clock at night, and said, pack your gear. We're going to Indio for somebody stranded on a rock-faced mountain. This was in 1958. And so they sent me down there with my partner out of the survival school. Was a survival guy too, but he wasn't trained out of stead. He was just had been in the service, and so that he was running the school. But the Sheriff's Department had this guy stranded down there in the middle of the night, and had been there for 12 hours already on a ledge, caught on a ledge coming down the side of a mountain. He'd fallen from the mountain top. So they raced it over. They raced from the base. We went in there and got our stuff and threw it in the trunk of the. One was a Pontiac and one was a Dodge, brand new. And they could go over 100 miles an hour down to Indio, California. So we went down there in the middle of the night. Now it's pitch black. They had no lights or anything. About 500 or 600 feet up the hill was the base of the rock face mountain. And then up there on the rock face, this guy was stranded. We couldn't see him from here.
That's crazy.
So I climbed up ahead of Mac, because I was a better climber than he was, looking for a place to tie a rope so we could go down and rappel down. And I found a little notch in the rock there, but I wasn't sure it was going to hold. But I tied it around there, and I said, okay, I've got it there, and I'll hold it in place so that it doesn't slip off while you walk over to him, see if you can get him on your shoulders and rappel down. And he did, while I held the rope in there, and then I clipped on that rope, and I went down that rope pretty fast. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning now. It's no lights,
right.
It's pitch black. So we got him back, and I thought the interesting thing about it was we got him back there. His family was there waiting for him. His parents, I think he was 22 years old, 21 or 22. And parents were there, and they were probably in their 40s. So anyway, we got him back down in one piece, saved his life. They came and got him. And you know what they said to us when we were done?
What?
Zero. Nothing. Not thank you, nothing.
Wow.
Thanks for it. Which my buddy and I thought that was kind of unusual, but
Very.
we hadn't rescued too many people with that. So anyway, then the police.
Like they didn't want. They were like, you should have just left him up there.
Yeah, well, no, they were all worried. But anyway, so then they took the 2 cars and they ran us back to the base. We got home sometime in the morning, and I went back home, and then we came in the next day and went to work. But so they made a big deal out of it. They decided to give us a medal, the highest peacetime. Well, there's certain medals that only enlisted people can get and only officers can get. Well, if it's enlisted and you save somebody's life or attempt to, whether you're successful or not, could get the medal. It's easier to get it if you actually accomplish it.
Mm-hmm.
We did, and so they had a big ceremony and a marching band. And
what was the medal called?
Soldier's Medal.
I'm gonna pull it up so people can see it. This one?
Yeah,
I guess that's not a.
The first one down there, the one with the stripes going vertical.
This one?
Yeah, that's it.
Pretty cool.
So we got that in 1958, and
what? So did they have the ceremony at like the base or where?
yeah, they had at the base. They had the parade, and the marching parade, and people up in the stands with the generals and everybody, and all of us up there. And so that was 1958, and then that was in March of 58, and in April of 58, the next month, my daughter was born. So I'll always remember her birthday was a month before that is when we got the Soldier's Medal. Now the medal is called something else, and it's called an emeritus for the same thing.
Let me see.
Starts with an A, I know. Unless they still call it the Soldier's Medal, but I have it on my wall as a Soldier's Medal, and it can only be.
Yeah, Airman's Medal? No.
No, it has.
I don't see a different name for it here.
It's for attempting to or rescuing somebody. It has to be. It can only be worn or won by an enlisted person in peacetime or out, not in a war zone. In other words, it can't be a war medal. It can only be a peacetime medal. Well, we didn't have a war at the time anyway, but which tells another story that happened years later. But anyway, so we got the medal, and then I applied. I said, well, I'm doing a good job here, and I'm happy with my job, but my son's going to have surgeries for the next 2 years, and I certainly can't afford it myself. And in order for the service to pay for it, it's going to take years, because I couldn't even get a humanitarian transfer to March from Stead because it was going to be over a year, and it has to be within a year. So I said, maybe I could get a little higher, like get higher up there and fly some airplanes or something. So I applied for OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, and I got accepted to apply to start school in June of '59.
And I'm guessing it's hard to get into a school like that.
It's an officer's test that pilots and everybody has to take. You can pass it. If you can pass it, you can do anything an officer can do. but in order to get into the school, you had to pass the test. And there were 2 levels of the test, which I didn't know until I watched a buddy of mine in front of me when we took the test. They give you the 4-hour test in the morning. You have to be scheduled, and you have to do a lot of other things. You have to be recommended by people, by your commander, and a bunch of other stuff. I can't remember what it was. That much was done.
Is it at like 4 in the morning too?
No, that was at like 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
The test was at 8 o'clock. And you had till 12 o'clock to finish the test. So 4 hours. And at the end of 4 hours, that was the end of your test time. I think most of us were done, you know. And there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of college stuff in there that, I mean, you probably could only get if you'd been pre-educated. So anyway, you took that, you left at noon to go to lunch. And then you came back at 1 o'clock, 1 hour later. They graded your tests in the office there with a special team that had come in to do that. They only did it every few months. And you had to take, if you took the test and you didn't get accepted to school, you had to come, you had to wait a year to try it again. Anyway, so we came back from lunch, and a buddy of mine that had taken the test was standing in front of me. And the gal says, okay, blah, 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 blah. She says, no, you didn't make it. Tells him. Says, you made it. You didn't get high enough grades to go to OCS. And I said, no, that's too bad. She said, you did make it to cadets if you wanted to go to cadets, which is a lot easier to get into because OCS is 6 months, and you had to learn how to be an officer in 6 months. Cadets was a year and a half because you went through pilot training and cadets all at the same time. So you had to learn the military and a military officer half and flying airplanes at the same time. Whereas if you were going to OCS, all you were trying to get to was the military. To go to cadets, you could not be married. You had to be single. You could never have been divorced. You cannot get divorced while you're in the school. You had all these really high restrictions. And he was standing in front of me, and he was the same as me, had married with 2 kids. He says, I can't go to that. She says, nope, try again next year. So I walk up there and I went, she said, oh, you're fine. Go take the second part of the test.
You must have got a serious grade then, huh?
Yeah. Well,
Nice.
got it high enough. And so then you take your grade test, or your score. Or you never know what it is, but you take that as part of your application, and they take 5 things. They take your test scores, your time in service, your rank, your job in service, and recommendations for all the people that you work, your commanders and everything. They put that all together and they send it off to Texas to the school, and then within a week or so you get a notice that you didn't make it or you're assigned. I got my letter in a couple of weeks that said you are provisionally qualified for the June class, or provisionally qualified for the October class if you don't get accepted to the June class. And then a week later I get the next letter that says you're assigned to the June class. So what it is, it's 6 months of officer training. 3 months is a lower class and 3 months is a higher class. They don't use those terms anymore because you can't be second class to a first class. And anyway, silly things, but I got pretty good scores in the first half, and I was promoted to a squadron commander for another squadron for second half of OCS. Anyway, graduated. Your wife pins your gold bars on in ceremony December of '59, And my next assignment was in 3 weeks in Marianna, Florida, to pilot training, because that's what I applied for. There were some other guys that applied for in OCS that applied for pilot training, because during the school they said, anybody interested in flying? Well, a bunch of us raised our hand, because there's like 600 apply for this class, and it's every 3 months they have a class.
Yeah, because like who's not interested in flying?
Well,
You know.
but well, some of them weren't. Some of them were like, I had a buddy of mine that was in OCS, who was a Cuban, and he was in OCS out of El Paso, and he went to OCS to become an officer. Then he went right back into being a commander. You know,
He's scared of heights.
he didn't like flying at all. I
Right.
guess I don't know what it was, but anyway, there was 40 of us, or 75 of us that raised our hand. They said, okay, we didn't have to take a test because the pilot school test was the same one we took to get to OCS. It's the same one this guy applied for that was good for. So it was if you pass the officer's test, you're qualified to do anything. But to be a pilot, you have to be qualified, but you also have to be physically qualified. And most everybody there was, you think of them as physically qualified, but part of the physical was being 20/20 uncorrected. You couldn't have any correction to your eyesight. If you were 20/20 corrected, you could go to navigation school, but you had to be 20/20 uncorrected in order to go to pilot school. So
I mean, it makes sense.
yeah, it does.
It makes perfect sense. You know, if you're wearing glasses and you're flying a fighter jet, or
Any kind of airplane.
any kind of anything, and your glasses fall down, or if there's any kind of anything over your,
Well, anything that happened.
I mean, even contacts. You know, oh my god, you know. So yeah.
No, you couldn't have any correction to your eyesight. So that was fine with me, because I was accepted. But out of the 600 that started for this course, there was 120 of us graduated. Of the 120 graduates, there were 40 applied for flying school. Of the 40, 14 graduated from pilot school
Wow.
out of that. And then you were assigned out of pilot school and not everybody in my pilot school class, which is only 3 that I know of that came from OCS. A lot of them came from they were already officers and they applied for pilot school, and some were out of ROTC that got their college degree and their pilot's license all at the same time. And anyway, of the 40, I guess, that I know about that got into pilot school, I think there were 14 graduated, or 12 or 14, and out of that whole group, then 12 actually got their wings.
Wow.
And of course, then it was another ceremony, because it takes a year to get through pilot training. And there were some cadets in there too, but I met one in pilot training, and we ended up in the same next two bases together. He passed away a few years back, but he ended up in tankers and facts and stuff. But anyway, so that was my career getting into flying school, and I went to KC-97 school and flew those for a couple of years. But
Let's pull that up. What was it, KC-97?
yeah, that was a 4-engine tanker propeller.
Boeing.
Yeah.
Stratofighter, is that what it was called?
Strato tanker.
Stratotanker. Freighter. Maybe?
Well, a C-97 is a cargo plane.
So this one has they fuel mid-flight? Is that the one that you flew?
I don't know what you say by mid.
This one has like a little thing going down.
See the
to
boom operator in the back?
Mhm.
That makes him a KC-130, KC-97. In other words, a C-97 is a cargo four-engine engine, been around for a while. They converted it to a KC-97 by giving it the capability to refuel other airplanes.
That's right. That's crazy.
Well, let me explain something.
Wait, so did you fuel other airplanes?
Yeah, that's what we did.
That's crazy.
That's what KC-97 does.
Wow.
But we don't do that anymore because everything you refuel is a jet. This is not a jet. This is a propeller airplane.
Right.
Which can't go as fast as a jet. So along comes this C-135, which is a cargo airplane. And they said, well, it's got all fuel tanks and it carries the same fuel, and we'll turn it into a KC-135 by putting a boom on it. And then we won't have to worry about the B-52s. Couldn't slow down enough to be comfortable behind a KC-97 because the KC-97 can only go so fast as a prop job, and the B-52 can only go so slow as a jet. So they made a KC-135. As you see there.
Whoops. Sorry. It's freaking out here. Come on now. I guess that one says Missouri Air Guard.
Oh, that's a KC-10. That's way after me. We're still flying KC-135s.
Okay.
An easy one. And
let me find it.
If I told you an airplane was a one, and I said it was a fighter, what would the number be? F1? 104 is what? A fighter? F-104? F4, that's the fighter we're using now. The B-2 was what? A bomber.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was called a B-2 or a B-52.
Okay,
or a B-47. If you call it an F airplane, it's a fighter. If you call it a B airplane, it's a bomber. If you call it a C airplane, it's a cargo airplane. If you hook a boom to a C-135 and give it all the refueling, and then teach the pilot how to fly a tanker, why do they put a K in front of it? So you'll know it's a tanker, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's a K?
I don't remember. I was looking at the computer when you were
kerosene.
Oh, kerosene?
Kerosene.
Okay.
That's what a
diesel?
No, kerosene is what jet fuel is.
Oh, okay.
So you put a K in front of the C-135 and you have jet fuel to give to somebody else, to give to a B-52. There's no KC, no K. The
Right,
KB-50 was a B-50, old B-50 bomber that they converted to a tanker years ago. So the KB-50, but you don't want to be flying one of those. But anyway, so the letter in front of the first letter in front of it, K, C, F, B, or E, which I'll get into later. But so
it's a big plane.
Oh yeah, it's a 4-engine jet. It's a 707.
And these were the first planes that you were flying?
The KC-97. Yeah, after pilot training, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are you flying in pilot training? Just like little Cessnas?
No, well, you start out with a T-34, a little Cessna type.
Mm-hmm.
But halfway through primary, we switched to the T-37, which is a twin-engine jet. So that's when you graduated from primary pilot training. Then you went to basic pilot training, the second half of your year, and you flew the AT-33 or the T-33, which is a trainer. It's the old F-86, and they converted it to a trainer, so it's a T-33.
So the T trainer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a cool plane right there.
That was a good one. So they still use that the T portion as a trainer, but T-33 before it became a T airplane, it was an F-84 or F-86, was a fighter they used in Korea, and then they quit using it there as they came up with the 100 and the 105 and F-105, F-100s. So, and we refueled those too. But anyway, that's what refueling's all about, is Casey's refueling airplanes. So, but they're doing away with the 97s, and when I was flying them, so they came by one day and said, okay, the squadron you're in at March there, in the old, I don't remember, the 222nd or something, refueling squadron, they're doing away with it. They're getting rid of the KC-97s, and they're going to bring in KC-135s. Well, you don't jump from one to the other without a little training or something. But anyway, so they're closing the squadrons down, is what they said. You have to go someplace else. They said, you got a choice. If you want to go try to find a KC-97 outfit to join and start all over again, or start... In order to get from the right seat as a co-pilot to the left seat as an aircraft commander, it takes a certain amount of time. Training, obviously. You start out a pilot training with about 250, 270 hours. So went to KC-97s to start flying those. It takes 800 hours of total flying time, plus a lot of training, to get from the right seat to the left seat.
And how many hours a day are you usually flying?
Well, in a tanker, you could be flying 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. It didn't matter.
So it takes years.
Yeah.
Years.
It takes years.
Yeah.
So I had just gotten about 800 hours in the KC-97 when they came along and said, we're closing the squadron. So you got a choice. You either go find another 97 outfit, and the only one I knew of was I'm in Southern California, and the one I knew about was in Bangor, Maine. And I said, that doesn't sound very good. And then you got to go there with all high-ranked guys that have been flying it for years. You get a shot at being an aircraft commander in the 97 didn't make sense, although I was checked out in one. So they said, oh, you can go to 135 and start over, in a new airplane with a new outfit, which is what I did. It takes 1,500 hours to be an aircraft commander in a 135. So I was sent to McCoy in 62. I was lucky enough to be there sitting on alert when the Cuban crisis was there as a brand new 135 pilot. And then circumstances brought me back to March. They were opening a brand new squadron, the 22nd Air Refueling Squadron, at March, when I needed to get back to Southern California again.
When you say the Cuban crisis, you mean like the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had to be sitting on alert,
right,
in case we went to war,
right,
if the Russians sent over anything.
Mm-hmm.
So then, so anyway, so I was transferred back to March in a 135 in a brand new outfit, and I was almost to 1,500 hours when I got there, but it takes more than that, because it takes seniority to get a squad, to get your own crew. So I waited a couple of years for that. But anyway, that's how I ended up flying 135s. Now, so I've been flying tankers for a long time, many years. And I had a family. And I'd flown to Spain, spent weeks there, in England and different places where they had tankers on TDY, what they call TDY, 3 weeks. And I'd been to Alaska and Canada and in different airplanes. So I was talking to Randolph one day, because we kept in the KC-135 squadrons, we kept losing pilots every once in a while. Said they're going to Vietnam. So I called Randolph. I was talking to him one day about assignments. I says, how can I get a European assignment for me and my family? I've been flying for years now. Well, they don't have KC-135s in Europe, stationed there permanently. So you're not going to get there and flying on KC-135. But you might get there if you had a full Vietnam tour, which I didn't have what they called a full Vietnam tour. I had 6 months here, 3 months here, 2 months here, and on the first mission to Vietnam out of Philippines, I was on in '64. They said what you have to do is you got to go spend a full year in Vietnam flying something else because they have other things there, like fighters. I said, okay, how do I do that? They said, well, you volunteer for one of these 3 airplanes, and if you open up, then you can go there. So I did, volunteered for it, and then I was over in Spain flying KC-135s, refueling bombers out of the States over to Russia. They used to come over there with 4 hydrogen bombs on board, B-52s, and they'd fly all the way to Spain, where we would refuel them, so they could go on to Russia border or Siberia, and if we didn't go to war, they'd turn around, come back, we'd refuel them again, and go back home. That mission was 24 hours.
Wow.
I flew 2 of those out of McCoy, out of Florida, as a third pilot, because you could do that as a third pilot, just building your time. But anyway, so they called me. I came back from England, and they said, guess what?
Well, hang on. What was it like fueling a plane that had, would you say, 4 hydrogen bombs on it? Did that feel any different?
No.
I feel like that would add a little bit of stress to the situation.
Your job as a KC-135 pilot was to refuel the bomber.
Okay.
Period.
That's it. Yeah.
What were they doing and going over there if they didn't have bombs?
Right.
Ready to go to war. Anyway, so they said, yeah, you have to choose one of these 3 airplanes, and then you'll have to go to Vietnam, which I'd been a lot of times, but not for a full tour. So I picked the OV-10 Bronco, which is a fighter airplane.
Which a lot of people aren't familiar with that plane. Like before, I was like, because you would talk about it a lot, and I would be like, oh, I can't remember. It's the one that has like the weird tail wing.
Yeah, it does have a double tail.
It's pretty badass. Like it looks. I mean, so the design of it with the tail wing like that, did they ever teach you like what was the purpose of that? Or
the purpose of the airplane is to be able to fly slow, fast, low, high, carried 4 machine guns and the sponsons, which are 2 sponsons on either side. Each sponson carried 500 rounds of 7.62 millimeter bullets, which gave you 2,000 rounds as a full load. And on each wing were 2 pods over the wings. Each pod carried 7 rockets. You could have HE rockets or Willie Pete's, which is white phosphorus. The airplane is called an OV-10A. What does all that stand for? Well, we talked about F and B and KC and all that. Well, what would an OV be? Observation.
Yeah, I was thinking observation because I mean, I was already looking at like the window design and how like the field of view is like you can almost see your waist.
Yeah.
Like you are full out there for them to see you. So I'd have to imagine this plane was very agile.
It is.
Like very, because if you and your co-pilot are that open to be seen and unprotected by metal and the glass, this thing has to be like just, it's not a sitting duck by any means.
No. But the OV observation 10 was number 10. That was the number they gave it. It was the 10th one of that string. Then it had an A on the end of it, which stood for attack.
Okay.
So it was an observation and attack airplane. So you had 2 jobs. That's why you had bullets and rockets. Well, you had smoke rockets for marking targets.
Was yours like camouflage? Like, what did it look like for Vietnam? Like, what was the?
It was kind of a silver colored.
Okay. Boring. I'm just kidding. It didn't have like a shark mouth on it.
No, had nothing on it.
Yeah, cool though. Super cool plane.
I don't know whether Karen ever showed you the one with me in it, with sitting in the cockpit with the cockpit open and my name stenciled on the side.
I think I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah. But that's what color they were. They're all the same.
Pretty sick.
But they said you could get an OV-10, we'll send you to school. It's, you know what, you got to go to survival schools. And this is the funny part. I get back from Spain on that trip, and they said, you got to go see the squadron clerk or something. He has some orders for you. You go in there, you get your orders. You're going to go to Southeast Asia and in the OV-10, and here's the schools you got to go to. You got to go to, because I wasn't fighter qualified. I was tanker qualified and bomber. You know, you have to be classified each type of airplane. First thing I got to go to, fighter school. Learn how to be a fighter pilot. Okay, fine. That's in Clovis, New Mexico, at Cannon Air Force Base. You also have to go to Worldwide Survival School. I said, you mean the one that was at Stead and is now up in Washington State? Yeah, that's the one I taught at the school for 10 years, or for 4 years, or whatever it was, that I was trained in. And yeah, why would I have to go to that school when I used to teach it? I said, well, it says here every 10 years. I said, well, I quit teaching it in 59 when I got commissioned, and this was 1969. They said, well, that's 10 years. You might have to go again. I said, tell them I was an instructor, rescue and survival instructor in that school.
Right.
And I moved with it, whatever it was.
Like you're going to go sit down in your own class?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Said, I don't. So they said, no, here, it said we can get a waiver on that. I said, okay. Now you have to go to water survival. Sounds fun to me. That's in Florida. And then you have to go to fighter school in Clovis, New Mexico, Cannon Air Force Base. And then you have to go through jungle survival, which all pilots going into Vietnam have to go to jungle survival in the Philippines. Well, that's on the way.
Jungle, this was the first time jungle was even a thing with American battle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, where else would we have fought where there's literal jungle?
It's all jungle.
Yeah.
The whole fucking thing is jungle. But, yeah. So I said, okay, fine. Okay, here's when you have to leave here. You go to, you won't go to this one survival school. You'll go to water survival in Florida. Now, I'm in California, sitting here telling you this, with a family and a car and a RV trailer. We're towing wherever we go. We got to sell the house we're in and they pick up all the furniture. So that's fine. Okay, when are we going to do that? Well, you're going to do this. You have to start planning this and do this. And so we did all of that and went to water survival in Miami, in the Biscayne Bay. It's one of the most fun schools you'll ever go to, because they teach you how to. It's so funny, when I got there, one of the first guys I meet is somebody I knew in a regular survival school way back at Stead Air Force Base. Where the hell have you been? And a regular thing. He said, you'll really enjoy this. Anyway, so you go and they take you on a big flatbed boat. They strap a parachute on you and a life raft on your butt and everything, just like if you were flying. You strap yourself in an OV-10, that's what you do. And then they hook you up boat comes by, drops a thing there. They hook up to the harness. A rope goes out to the boat, out in the water.
Oh, like a parasail?
Yeah, and it's what you're doing.
Oh, geez.
So you're going to go parasailing in this parachute, and they yank it. You run down the ramp as the boat takes off, and it pops. The chute pops up. Somebody back there is helping it get up, and then it gets up in the air, and the next thing you're up there parasailing, and then they send you a signal that you're to reach up and pop these two things in front of you that release the rope from you. Now you're just floating down in your parachute. And on the way down, you reach down and you pop open your life raft. So then you hit the water. You got a Mae West on. You hit the water, and then you climb into your one-man raft, and then they come along. You take off your parachute harness while you're in this one-man raft floating around in the water. They come by with a boat and pick up the parachute and the harness, and then they pick up the raft in the helicopter, take it away, and then you're sitting out there in the bay. And I sat out there for about 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
But the weather's warm, and you're in your flight suit and boots and everything that you would wear if you were flying. Well, when I got there and I talked to this guy that I'd known from years before, I said, "What do you do out there?" He says, "Well, you do whatever you want, you know."
Bring a beer. And...
Yeah, well, no, you couldn't do that. But he says, I said, "Is there a fishing kit with this whole outfit?" "Yeah, there is." I said, "Oh, I could sit there and go fishing, I guess." "Yeah, you could." I never heard of anybody catching anything.
But you're floating like with a vest on?
Well, the Mae West.
Like a, yeah.
But you're in a life mat or life raft.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A one-man life raft. Mm-hmm. Laying in the water, nice and warm and everything. So,
but you're still wet.
Oh, you're soaking wet.
Yeah, right.
So they, on the way there, I bought some shrimp, raw shrimp, in a little bag and put it in my flight suit pocket. So we're out there flying, so I get out one of the shrimp and I get this little fishing kit, hooked up the thing. So I'm sitting out there, and after about 30 minutes, I just tugging, and I pull this fish in. The fish is about, I don't know, 12, 15 inches long. Mm-hmm. So I take the bag that I had the shrimp in, I take the last couple of shrimp out, and I slip the fish into the bag, and seal it, and hook another one in there. I catch another fish.
Do you remember what kind of fish it was?
No, it was like a trout. It looked like that, but it was whatever it was for the ocean. So I caught two fish there. What would a survival instructor do out there other than practice what he preaches? Mm-hmm. So I came back, and then they pick you up. They come by and they say, "We're going to pick you up," and they come by in a helicopter, and they drop a harness down, and you put the harness on in your raft while they hover, and then they're ready to go, and then they haul you up into the helicopter. And when you get to the helicopter, it's all lined in ponchos, you know. So and they pick you up, and as you come in, they just slam you into the airplane and slide you into the other side of the wall, which is covered so that all your water goes up against the poncho liners. And then you take your harness off, and then another one, and I forget whether they hauled the boat up, the raft. I guess they did. They hauled it up and put it in the cockpit, and then we went and got somebody else.
They're like, this one's a fishy one. We got a fishy guy here.
No, it was probably half alive, but anyway.
The fish were still. I didn't even think about that. So you have two live fish in a bag in your pocket?
Yeah. So when I get back to the base, and they take you back to the base, I go up to this buddy of mine. I said, "Well, that was fun." It was a lot of fun the whole day. I said, "You got to lift me out there." I said, "But I brought you back a present, and your boss, who I had met before, was his boss. Not when we were at Stead together, but then." I said, "I brought you back each a present," and I handed him the bag of fish. He looks at this. He says, "Of all the people we put through this course, You're the first one that ever did that. I says, what's a survival kit for if it isn't to catch
Well,
fish?
and like, what did the other guys do the whole
They
time
just
that
sat
they're?
there for 3 hours, I guess. So,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I says, and they said that's amazing. And my buddy says to his boss, he says, well, he was one of us way back instead. He says, anyway, so then from there, the next thing for me was Clovis, New Mexico, was fighter school. But because I didn't go to the one school that they had scheduled, I had another 3 weeks or something before I had to be in that school. So we went up north, escaping a hurricane that was coming in, and went up, and I taught my son to go fishing up there in the Great Lakes area up in Canada. We got some walleye fish up there, and we ate those. And because we're still hauling a camping trailer, the family, and
What were you hauling it behind? What were you driving at that time?
Cadillac.
Nice. What
Yeah,
what year
that-
Cadillac?
Huh?
What year Cadillac was
What
it?
year was it?
So it was like 60. This would have been 60. 4 or 5, or was it later?
How about 69?
69 Cadillac. All right,
Yeah,
that's a good
brand new
one.
Cadillac. I bought it before we went on the trip. Had to have something I could haul the trailer with.
What color was that one?
It was gold and white. Had a white vinyl top to it. The gold colored. My father-in-law at that time worked for a Chevrolet dealer, and so he got me a deal. Traded my Pontiac in on it.
Man, 69 was a great year for just everything.
It was a Coupe de Ville.
Oops. Come on. It's a sick car.
Yeah. Same color.
Yeah. Cool car. And you were towing a camper trailer behind it.
Green one.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a cool setup.
It was, you know, it was just the wife and I and the 2 kids,
Mhm.
you know, and a dog. Of course, always had a dog. But so, anyways, so we headed to Clovis, and there was going to be 3 months of fighter school training, which was the most pleasant flying duty I ever had in my life. I'd never flown a fighter in that type of situation, but they were flying AT-33s, which was the same airplane I flew in pilot training years before.
Mhm.
So that was all easy to do. But you went out in 4-man groups if it was your turn, and you went out in 4-ship formation, and you broke up in the tail gate, and you spun off. And you went out over, first off, you went out and dropped these little foot-long bombs. The problem was you're at, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 feet, whatever we were. And you have no radar, you have nothing other than just you by yourself in the cockpit. It's a 2-man airplane, but there's nobody in the back seat for this. And you're flying that, and you have to figure out from what the tower's telling you out there in the range. The tower's telling you what the winds are and what the winds are at the altitude you're at, and you have to look down at the ground and figure out if the target's here and the wind is from right to left, it's going to blow my bomb this way coming down. And you're flying at a...
It's like golfing.
Yeah, but there's no way to plan what it really does.
Right.
Anyway, so you had to do a couple of bomb runs, and up in the tower it graded you on your bomb runs, and we were awful on bomb runs because these little dinky things would go anywhere after you dropped them off. But we went through the procedure, and then the rockets then were different. because you had 2 rocket guns, and you come down and they lead you down to the target, and there you didn't worry, and you got a lot lower and you didn't worry near as much about the wind because you're shooting a rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did pretty good on the rockets.
God, that's got to be so fucking cool.
It was, but not as cool as the next part, strafing. Strafing is set up with a tent about the size of your house by 2 poles. It's a big canvas tent. You come down to a pretty low level. There's a foul line. You can't get below that. You don't want to be above this. And you come down and you clear it in, because there's 4 of you, and you've spaced yourself out into a traffic pattern. And so it's your turn to come in, and you come in, and you try to do a 30-second burst or less, and you hitting the target with your bullets, but you can't tell where you're hitting. You just, if you're lucky enough, some of the bullets are going through the canvas. Well, before I get into this though, the bullets are all painted. If there's 4 of you, one of them's an instructor. His bullets are not painted; they're clear. If Larry and Sonny and I, which is usually the 3 of us flew together, one would be red, painted red, one would be painted blue, and one would be painted yellow. So that if I was red, or whatever color I was, and I came in and I strafed, and I hit the target 3 times maybe, out of a burst of 30 bullets. And then you came around, you did this 3 times. And maybe I hit 10, or maybe I hit 20, but you don't know, because you can't tell going that fast, going by the canvas. So you go back and join it back up in 4 men, and then we fly in a 4-man group all through the mountains of New Mexico, through the hills. You could see the hills off to the side, because you'd be flying on lead. And I was usually number 2, and Larry was 3, and Sonny was 4, or the other 2, 3 and 4. We were all in the class together, and they were ex-pilots from something else. Sonny was from 135s, but anyway. So that was the most fun to see that going by the mountains and stuff, and flying in the formation, because you're always flying on lead, and you're going about 300 miles an hour. You don't dare hit the other airplane.
Right. So then it was like a competition to see who.
No, that wasn't it. The competition was just to have fun. You know.
I meant like for the target, like
for
the
target was
individual colors for the bullets.
But you didn't count your own. Say this was on Tuesday. So they came back and they set up Wednesday's targets, or somebody else going out that day, another group. And they had their target marked 325, and ours was 324 or 326 or something. By a day or 2 later, it got out to the base, and they spread it out. If let's say that my group was 324, we were going to go out there, and we were going to count 275, group 275, a couple days before. I was to count the blue ones, Sonny counts the red ones, and Larry count the yellow ones. We weren't counting our own, we were counting somebody else.
Right, because then you could fake it.
Yeah. We didn't even know who. We just knew that they were flying this particular number.
Yeah.
And then we'd fly them and turn them in. Then the next, maybe 2 days after you did it, they would come out and here's your score. And you go into the score and you sit to the 3 of you and the instructor pilot. Who had the lowest number? Well, it looks like Larry, you had the lowest number. Go pay for the beer.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Nice.
It's because we weren't flying the rest of the day. Then we always had a party almost every night.
Yeah, of
All
course.
the groups got together, families, and had great parties. A lot of drinking and a lot, no drinking the day of flying, because you didn't fly every day, but every day you flew. It was just so much competition and the fun and learning how to do it, because you'd never done it before. And I was enjoying it so much I didn't want to leave the gunnery school. Anyway, the next trip after that was to Travis Air Force Base, as the whole class went there, and of course we went back, we met our wives and family and everything, and then we stayed in San Francisco the last 2 nights before we left, and went out and had grandparents take care of the kids, and got on the plane and said goodbye, and it was 19, yeah, it was the end of, it was like January of 60, I believe. January 1970, I'm sorry, 69. Yeah, it was January 70 or December 69, that era there. We were starting January 70, and we got on the airplane and flew to the Philippines. You're going to jungle survival now, and that lasted about 4 or 5 days. You went out and you spent your night out in the jungle by yourself, you know, and
Wow.
and they had a system set up there. You could sit in groups of 2 or 3 or hide out. You find a hideout in the jungle or someplace. And while you're hiding, they're just sitting there waiting. Couldn't sleep, you know, just, you didn't have beds or anything. But while you're there, then these little negritos, little Filipino people were hired to come out and find you, like the enemy. And when they found you, they would get a ticket from you. You had 3 tickets. So they come by, and the first guy comes out. You've been out there for a couple hours, and all of a sudden he comes up. You give him a ticket.
Gotcha.
He takes the
Oh, it's
ticket.
like a poker run for
Yeah.
them? That's pretty cool.
So you give him a ticket. So there was one night, there was 3 of us hiding there together. First guy comes by, and then nothing for a couple hours, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, the next 2, they're all knowing where they are, telling each other. The 3 tickets are gone, and never got bothered again. And then the second night out there, you're by yourself. You have to build your own little canopy, and you know, I got scared that night by some kind of plant. I was tied to a tree of a plantation, some plantain tree, and it came down and hit my canopy of the little tent that I'd built that I was under, and went whack like that. And what the hell was that? And then you hear this running through the jungle, an animal, and you know it's a civet cat was out there, and they could be mean, but they weren't normally, you know. So then he left that school, and when I was going through that school, all the way through everything else, I was a captain. I'd been promoted to major, but I hadn't gotten my number up yet. So we were flying out of the Philippines to Da Nang, or to Cam Ranh, actually, and the plane was taking off at 11 o'clock or something and landing in Vietnam at 1 in the morning. So it was going to fly through midnight. So I had my flight suit, already had my major's leaves sewn on, my flight suit, because as of midnight, my number was to be up and I was to be a major. That I'd been promoted the year before, but my number was so far down the list. They went by, because I was commissioned in December, so the guy that was commissioned in January, his number was a lot higher than my number in January. That was the year the first class of the Air Force Academy graduated, so they were in the middle of all of that, stealing the commissions from other people. Anyway, so I had my jacket, had captain's bars on it, and halfway there, as we crossed the clock to midnight from the Philippines to Vietnam, I took my jacket off and said, "Guess what, guys? Now I'm a major, so I'm your boss for all you captains." Anyway, they thought that was funny because I reported in as a major, which they had me coming in as a major. So I went in there. We went to Cam Ranh and checked in. We were oriented. They told us which base we were going to. They said, "Okay, you guys from your class, there are 2 assignments. You're going to be here as a forward air controller," which we knew. and there's 2 bases open right now. They're looking for replacements. One was NKP, Nakhon Phanom, in Thailand, and one is Da Nang, Vietnam. He said there's 2 majors here, me and Langenbach, had been a major for a couple of years or something. And he says one of them's going to NKP and one of them's going to Da Nang. But Langenbach, you're rank, so you get to pick. I'm going to Thailand, which I was thinking about it. I said, well, you know, what? I guess because I'd been to Thailand before, been to both NKP and Utapao and all the rest of them. So that wasn't anything new. But if you're going to live someplace, you're better off living in Thailand than you are Vietnam. Just flying the same mission, same kind of airplane, flying the same mission, same area out in the Ashaw Valley and stuff. But
And had there been any talks at this time about, you know, like the Vietnam War and all that stuff? Like, was there conflict going on between North and South Vietnam?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
this was 1970.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an
Well,
idea of the time.
Yeah, it was very hot at that time. The idea for me, for what my job was in Vietnam was, he took that one, I took Da Nang, and most of my guys followed me to Da Nang. They didn't want to go with Langenbach because he was an idiot. But anyway, he was.
Right.
And that's the way they thought about him. But the job I had in Vietnam was as a forward air controller. So when you get there, they say, okay, here's where you are, here's where you're living, here's your airplanes are here, the OV-10. You go out there, when you go out on a mission, but you go out there for 2 reasons initially. You're going out there, you're looking for a target to hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the observation. If you find one, then you call it in, and they send you something with bombs to hit it. The other part would be if they said, okay, you're going out here, here's your target. You're to meet your airplanes out there at a certain time, and then you guide them in. You got to go out there and make sure you know where it is, and then when you put the ordnance in. So that was the job of a forward air controller, and that was our job. And Covey Facts was a job. So I go to Da Nang.
How did you decide like what was a target or not? Like, but I guess like what were you looking for? Were they like shooting at you and you were like, okay, those are the guys?
Well, if they were doing that, but you're looking at a jungle map. Jungle maps are green. That's all they are, and I can tell you that. So it's hard to find a target that you think is worthy of sending something out. I did that. I almost got killed because I found a storage area which was guarded by anti-aircraft guns. So I called in it, and that was another part of the story. But that's as close as I've probably ever been killed in my life. Was that day. That was after I was already there. But that was the whole idea of us being in the war. If you want to know. Da Nang was in the middle of South Vietnam. Quang Tri, which I flew out a lot of, second half, was on the border of North and South Vietnam.
And the border was the trail. There was a
No.
Okay.
No, that was the border. The border went like this.
Let me
between North and South Vietnam.
just split straight in half.
Yeah, but the border is very narrow because North Vietnam comes down to a narrow point, and then South Vietnam starts there at the narrow point and widens out. If you look at a map, that's what you see up at Quang Tri.
Oh, right. Okay, this makes more sense. Yeah, I just want to make sure the audience knows what we're talking about here. So your base was right somewhere along
right there in the middle.
Okay.
Not middle of Vietnam, which is this part. See where it gets real narrow up there at the border?
Yeah.
That's That's Quang Tree. The base Quang Tree up there is where I flew out of a lot of my later on stuff in the Green Beret stuff. But the trail, I don't know if you can find the trail. Think of the trail starting here at the border of North Vietnam and South Vietnam.
What was the trail called again? What was that guy's name? Ho Chi Minh, right?
Ho Chi Minh Trail. Well, Ho Chi Minh, yeah. The trail started in North Vietnam, not there at the border, because North Vietnam could not come through the border to South Vietnam because we had bases there with artillery and guns and everything else. So they couldn't come straight into South Vietnam. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to be in South Vietnam to convert the people over to their thinking and to take care of the country. So envision yourself as being from the North Vietnam part up here, and the trail was to get to South Vietnam along here. So it started out as one trail and divided into 5 trails.
Okay, yep.
Like spread out a hand. And it came into all 5 parts of South Vietnam. And that was where we were fighting the trail, to try to interdict the trail, which meant stop the trail from coming in. Mm-hmm. If it was all just one trail coming out of the border there, up there, that'd be easy to stop. And they knew that.
And for people I showed images of the jungle, but like this is like the reason why it's like the only pathway is because the jungle is so fucking thick that like this is like the trail of transport, right? Like, yeah, I mean, like
the trail had to come through a lot of thick jungle, but the trail was what you call the Ho Chi Minh Trail was a trail that started out in North Vietnam and it came down to that we were to stop the people on the trail, which is called interdiction. Our whole job in the South Vietnam air power was to interdict the North Vietnam from coming into South Vietnam. So they had to come down through Laos, which was the main battlefield of the Vietnam War, the Air Force. When you took off out of NKP and a KC-135 to go up and meet some targets out of Thailand, which I did a lot of that before the Vietnam tour, but which was called part of the Vietnam tour, but out of Tok Lee and U Bon and U Dorn, all those along the Thailand trail, was to fly up, refuel them. They went into North Vietnam to drop bombs. They were F-4s and whatever. And then they came back if they needed fuel. We gave them fuel, and then we came all the way back down to South Vietnam into Thailand, into Utapao, and they went back to their bases. That was our job. Then my job now as a forward air controller was to live in Vietnam, to go out and find a target, to have fighters come from another base and go up and blow up something. Or if they sent me out because they knew of a target, for instance, part of the trail was actually a road, or the Ho Chi Minh Trail was part of a road. And I remember going out one day and they said, here's your target, and here's the road, and here's your target on the road. You're to go out and destroy this. You're to meet some F-4s with 20,000-pound payways, one per plane. They will guide those bombs into your target where you mark the target. My rockets had 2 pods of Willie Pete's, or white phosphorus, to mark targets, and we had 2 of HEs to help the ground troops, or high explosives. So you were to go out there and you mark the target. When they get there, and you know they're there, and they can see you, and you're on time, you tell them you're going in to mark the target. And they watch you go in line up with the target, and you shoot a smoke rocket into the target area. And then you peel off. And
How low would you get to the ground?
Well, that's kind of hard to say. If you have a
I'm just trying to get an idea of like how powerful these like rockets are, you know, like
they're pretty powerful.
yeah.
You have to be lined up with it, and you have to be within a couple of 1,000 feet of altitude to shoot.
Can you feel a difference in the plane when the rocket leaves the airplane? Can you like feel it leave the airplane or no?
No.
Okay.
No, you have too much adrenaline running through you. I suppose if you just fired one out of nowhere for no reason. But anyway, so you mark the target. And if you're on the target, then you say, okay, JL1, did you see my smoke? Yes. Okay, you're cleared in. Can you see me? He says, yes, I see you. And I said, okay, I see you. If we see each other, if he knows where I am, and I know where he is, where he's coming down to, and he sees the target, I'll clear him in hot, which means he can drop his bomb where it's supposed to go. If he starts down and he says, I don't see you, Cubby, where are you? And you say, I don't see you either, you're not cleared in.
Right.
He's at 25,000 feet, and I'm at 1,000 feet, or 2,000 feet. So we don't want to hit each other. He especially doesn't want, I especially don't want to get hit by him because he's going a lot faster and bigger than me am.
God, it seems so far away, like 1,000 feet, and you're looking up. He's at 25,000, but I guess the bomber's just such a big plane, right? It would be harder for him to see you, I would think, right?
No, not necessarily. He has a backseater or a co-pilot seat, but he knows where the target is, and he can see all above, you know.
And from 20,000 feet, they can see the smoke signal too.
Yeah, and they're coming down. They know where the target is supposed to be, but exactly where they want it, they have to hit my smoke. And if they see me and my smoke went where it was supposed to go, and I said, "You're cleared in hot. Hit my smoke." That was our primary language. If I can't see him and he can't see me, I can't clear him in hot. And it doesn't matter whether you can see my smoke or not.
So then you could see the bombs coming down from the bomber?
No, I couldn't see the bombs.
But you'd see him, obviously.
I'd see him come down. And then...
Oh, he would come down lower?
Well, yeah, he wouldn't drop them 25,000.
Okay.
He'd drop them from probably 5,000 or 6,000.
Okay.
Out of artillery. Or, in other words, he's coming this way to this target. So around about here or someplace, he'd drop his bombs. They would continue on to the target. I'd be over here watching, going what's on. I've already...
Do you need some water or something? We could take a break.
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, that was my job as a forward air controller. We had a separate unit into our Cubby forward air controllers. It was called Prairie Fire. And this was like any other war. You had guys doing top secret things against the enemy. And this one was done by the Green Berets on the ground. And they were out of MacV, which was up by Quang Tri by the border. And as a Prairie Fire FAC, you were charged with two jobs, really. One was to put a team in of Green Berets into secret spots to go do things that you didn't even want to know about. And the other was to get them out and to support them all the time that they're out there. So Bob Meacham was the Prairie Fire commander when I got there. I didn't know him. I mean, I met him, but I didn't know what he did. Shortly after I got to Vietnam, to Da Nang, he was killed doing a mission. Mike McGurty, who was with him in Prairie Fire, was one of his group. Prairie Fire, there was 50 pilots, 50 packs in Covey, in the squadron that I was in. In fact, they said, here's the 50 pilots that are working for you when I got there, because they were all captains and below. But Meacham was the senior captain, and he got killed, and Mike McGurty was one of his people. And I knew Mike McGurty. I'd met him, talked to him a few times. I thought he was a very religious guy, because he worried. Only thing I noticed about him is I thought he worried too much about getting killed. But he was very religious, so he prayed every night in his room, and that was it. That was him, not me. But anyway, but
he must have felt it coming.
I don't know. Anyway, Meacham got killed, and Mike McGurty was his senior Prairie Fire fact worked for him. Maybe that's what he worried about, was doing his job, because it was a little more dangerous. Well, it wasn't a lot more. It was a lot more, but I guess I found out. But anyway, so about 5 weeks after Meacham was killed, McGurty gets killed doing a mission, because you're doing a different mission. You're getting close to the ground. You're working a team on the ground. You're either giving them cover, trying to get them out, or putting them in. And usually you got in trouble when you're trying to get them out of the jungle. So my boss comes up to me, Ed Cullivan, Colonel Cullivan, comes up to me, God rest his soul. He made it back to the States, but anyway, he walked on. He says, "I got a new job for you." I said, "What's that?" He says, "You're the new Prairie Fire commander." Well, I hadn't been there, because two of the things you're supposed to have to get into Prairie Fire, because some guys wanted to and some guys didn't. It was so top secret. I didn't know what I wasn't sure what. I knew what they did, kind of. He says, "You're the new Prairie Fire commander. You're taking over Prairie Fire." I said, "I thought you had to have two things to get into Prairie Fire. One, you had to be a volunteer, because it was a higher risky job. The first one, I said, I hear you had to be half your tour over before you got into Prairie Fire, because you had that experience." He said, "You've been here long enough," even though it was only a couple of months. He says, and I said, "Oh, what's the other part?" He says, "I volunteered you."
Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah.
So I became the Prairie Fire commander. I had 6 guys working for me. Supposed to have 7. Supposed to be 8 of us. Never got that many, because it was always down to 6, because somebody was disappearing sometimes, not in a nice way. Anyway, Jimmy Smith and Teeter and a couple of guys that I lost. But our job then was doing just what I said, sneaking teams in. That way, your targeting is totally different. They say, "Okay, here's our target tomorrow. We're going to put a team in here, mark X on this green valley here." There's no markers there to look at. The VOR stations we used for triangulation while we're flying won't work that close to the ground. We had no GPS, of course, there wasn't any such thing. So you had to use landmarks to figure out where you were, exactly where they wanted you to put these guys. The landmarks you could use were mountains, the rivers. That's it.
Yeah.
And you had to figure out how far away you were from this river to this river, and how far away from the mountain to this rivers, and where they joined, and pick out a spot there. Then this is where they wanted to put you. And they gave you the map. So you had a map, but the map was a green map of the jungle. And then you had these other 2 things. You couldn't use the roads. You could use some, but you couldn't use all. You couldn't depend on the roads being where they were when the map was made 25, 30 years ago by the French. when the French took over Vietnam, Dien Phu, way back when. And so our maps were old, and roads change. The rivers never change. The mountains never change.
I mean, you can't even trust the French put them in the right spot in the first place either, you know?
Well, but just that the maps were old, they were probably accurate at the time. But so you went out the day before, you went out that day when they told you where they wanted to target, and you found the target. You found where you wanted to go and what it meant to you, where you're looking. Then you went out the next day before the team would come out in helicopters, because that's how they got out there. And they would come over here and a hold over here. Well, I said, okay, I'm going in to mark the target. Now you're sneaking people into an area that they're not supposed to be in. It's enemy territory. So you don't go in and shoot rockets in the ground and say, this is where I want to put you, which would have been an easy thing to do. Because then you're telling everybody you're doing something like that out of nowhere. You're telling people where you are, where they are. So you sneak them in. How do you sneak them in? Well, you line it up. You say, I'm going in to mark the target. And you go around and you say, okay, they're at my 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. They're right on my nose. I'm getting ready. The idea is to go right over the spot where you want to put them. 10 feet off the treetops. 10 feet off the treetops. That's as low as you can get. That's because when you're looking from up here, the lower you get, the closer you get to the target. Going 200 knots.
Wow.
So you're going screaming along 200 knots, hoping you don't hit a dead tree that's sticking up out of it you don't know about.
Oh, because there's no foliage and it would just...
No, the end of the juggets here, and the only thing that'll stick up through the jungle is a dead tree, because there's no leaves.
Yeah.
And we've had a few guys hit dead trees up there. And anyway, you didn't see any, but you don't see the thing until you hit it. But so anyway, get ready, mark. So then as soon as I say mark, then I've marked the target, and they come swooping in right behind me to get the guys off on the ground through the jungle, however they get them in there, as quick as they can, and they want out there so that nobody knows we were there that fast. And that's what made this thing so secret, what we were doing. They've been doing it in every war in some way or another, and this was called Prairie Fire, was the name of the outfit, but when we put them in, they were just putting a target in. Then they would pull back, and of course they would wait for 15, 20 minutes, and we would go up and fly around for a while. And I always had one Green Beret in my back seat, and that airplane's a two-seater, one in the back seat. They didn't fly the airplane, they didn't know they weren't pilots, but they could talk to the guys on the ground in a special radio communication thing they had. So they would monitor. Then our job then, as the whole Prairie Fire flight, all the guys working for me, we knew we had a team on the ground. Whether I put them in or one of my guys put them in or whatever, we knew about where they were. So we would, every day, 24 hours a day, just about, we would fly the area. And if they got in trouble, they called us. If they didn't get in trouble, they wouldn't call us. After a couple of days, headquarters, the MACV, the military Green Beret outfit, would want to know how they're doing. Where are they going? How close are they getting to wherever the target was? So we might call them, or they might call us and say, "You knew where they went, but you can't. If they went 1,000 meters northwest, you could look at your map and say, okay, 1,000 meters northwest is about here." So you knew that's where they went the first day. Then the next day you made 1,000 meters due west, about where they were. You didn't worry about them as long as they went there for a specific reason, either gather information, kill somebody, like we still do that in Iraq and or just gathering information or killing somebody or checking something out anyway.
And they're just roughing it in the jungle down
Oh
there
yeah,
for
they're down there.
however long.
10-man team, 15-man team,
Wild.
25-man team, 32-man team was the biggest I ever had. It was the most I ever did. Anyway, so we did. That was our job, and then that's why I said we had 6 or 7 guys. We flew 24-hour missions, 24 hours covered, 24 hours a day. Maybe not solid, but I mean. Then when somebody got in trouble, if they got in trouble on the ground and needed to get out, which they always did, because the bad guys would catch them and they'd get in a firefight, the only way they could get help was to call Covey and declare a prairie fire. So they had to get a prairie fire back. And there was like only 6 or 7 of us at the most. So that's where you flew over there. If you had to get them out, that's what you did. And then that's when you found out that you had 2,000 rounds of ammunition and so many rockets. In one day, we got up at 5:30 in the morning, and my backseater, a Green Beret Satan, because he was quite concerned about the team had been out there about 5 days, and it was a big team. We don't know what they were. I didn't know what they were doing. He probably did, but.
What was his name?
I don't know what his real name is.
What did you call him?
Satan.
Yeah.
It was his call sign.
Right.
There was Blister.
Call sign Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did most of my missions with me in my back seat. Blister did some in the beginning. I don't know what Blister's name was either. And then the last one I had was, I knew his last name. Oh, his name was Moose, but I knew his last name was Teeter because it's on the rolls of being killed with one of my facts, Jimmy Smith. And I had to write Smith's letter home to his mother and stuff. Anyway, Teeter and he were killed the same day. They're on the big wall down in Washington, D.C. I traced their names off of that with chalk. Traced them off the thing back way a few years ago. Anyway, and then I had to read their name at the last reunion. But anyway, so Smith was the last one I lost. Larry Hull was either before that or after that, and I don't know who his backseater was with. Teeter I knew because he flew with me on Christmas Day in 1970, and then I couldn't get to the crew, the people that were calling for help because the weather was too bad. But it was a very dangerous place to be flying in. So I turned around and came back, which I told all my guys to do. Well, obviously Smitty thought he could get up there closer, I guess, and he went and ran into the mountain.
Damn.
2 days later, it was 20. I thought it was the 27th, but they said it was the 28th. But either way. But that was our job.
He didn't follow orders?
Well, he followed orders. He was doing his job. But there was something, I'll tell you what kind of mission it was, and then that'll explain it. They'd gone in a few days before. I didn't have anything to do with putting them where they were. They were on the side of a mountain. A river ran up to a couple of mountains, and they were put up there, and the weather was good and everything, and then they got in trouble, and so they'd been in trouble a day or two, and so I had Satan in the back seat, I had Teeter. Christmas Day, I had Teeter in the back seat. We were going to try and get him out.
Satan was off on Christmas?
Well, you never knew who's going to fly with who. It's just Satan usually flew with me. We almost ran out of gas one time coming back to Quang Tri, and I said, if we get if we can't make it into the base because of bad weather, and we have to eject because we're going to run out of gas, we'll just turn it towards the ocean, towards the bay there. And when I think we're just about to run out of gas, I'll eject. He says, would you do me one favor? And I said, sure. We just come to get through the weather. We had just flown through the town of Quang where the TV antennas are higher than I was.
Oh, wow.
And because we were under the clouds. So if we don't break out and find the base. But we knew that street ran to the river, and then the river turned right, and then it turned left again. And when it turned left, it headed for the bay. You couldn't see it because we were skimming the bottom of the clouds, and you couldn't see it from the top. If you can't see it from the top, you can't get down to it. I said, if we break out there and break out where the base is, then we'd be fine. If we don't, and I have to turn right to get away from it, before we run out of gas, we'll head towards the ocean, we'll eject over land. He said, do me one favor. I said, sure, what is it? And he says, just tell me 10 seconds before you pull the handle, so I'll know. Because if the back seater pulls his handle, he'll eject out of the airplane.
And you'll stay in?
And I would stay there. If the pilot pulls his handle, it ejects both airplanes.
Really?
Both pilots.
And you guys are just both,
you go out kind of like that.
Oh, okay.
You go out the same cockpit, through the cockpit,
Mm-hmm.
but one goes a little bit left, the pilot goes a little bit left, and the backseater goes a little bit right, so they don't go up and
They're
hit
not
each
back.
other. Yeah. But so if he wanted, for some reason, if the pilot got shot or something and it was going to crash or something, and the backseater could get out, he would eject. But he can't eject the pilot if he just thinks he's in trouble or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the pilot ejects everybody because he knows the plane's going in. Well, we didn't have to do it anyway, but that was one time we
those are those real man-to-man talks. Like,
yeah, we joked about it afterwards, but anyway, then this one that I did on Christmas Day, I had to fly up the river to try to get up to where I knew about where they were. And you had to get under the clouds because you couldn't fly. Clouds were covering the mountains, but you could get lower enough out here to get under the clouds and come up the river. And I told them, as long as you can see the river, we were flying over the river, you have to get, the river's coming down this way. So you're going uphill just to stay above the water. But the clouds are right above you. So you can only go so far and you're in the clouds. And getting in the clouds between the mountains is a no-no.
yeah.
So he is in the back seat. We were trying to get this. He was really concerned about this crew on the ground. He knew him, I guess. And we were talking to him, and they said that at one point I thought they said they could hear us, the airplane. But we couldn't see. And I told my guys, if you get up to a curve in the river where you can and you can see the next curve in the river, you can go on and try to get there. If you can't see that curve, in other words, if the clouds have gone down and you're coming uphill and the clouds have obscured the next turnaround in the river, you might say, or where you can see to turn around, you turn around right now and get the hell out. Because all you're doing is getting yourself in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Jimmy Smith did.
I see.
So that's how I knew where they were. It still took us, the weather stayed so bad, it still took us almost 5 days to get to them. And they finally got to the crew on the ground. They lost a couple of their people.
I saw something recently. They admitted to cloud seeding during the Vietnam War. Did you ever hear anything about that?
That's just what I heard in the news. Yeah, I didn't. So
those treacherous storms that you were flying in were like created.
Well, when I had to fly out of I couldn't get into Quang Tri or Da Nang one time, and we had to go to NKP, because the weather was so bad, but it was a thunderstorm, and those you don't create thunderstorms.
I see.
It was so bad that you couldn't get anywhere close to Da Nang or any of the
I mean, it's a jungle, you know. I have to imagine the weather.
As high as you could go. Nobody could get off the ground of any of the bases. We were already out there, and we couldn't get back to Da Nang or Quang Tri, because normally I'd drop my back seat off here done for the day and drop them back at Quang Tri, because that's where the military base was. And we were working this team on the ground. They weren't in trouble yet, but we went over to NKP and stayed the night. And Satan was so worried about this team on the ground because he knew them, and he knew it was a big team. It was really important that they get them back. And so we went over to NKP. I said, well, they can always put us up there. Well, NKP didn't have any barracks room or anything, so they put us downtown, which is okay because we could get a good meal. And I had them refuel my airplane. We were up at 5:30. We were off the ground at 6:30 in the morning. And we took off, and we're headed back towards Quang Tri, back over the area where the team was. Weather was fine. It was still really bad back south. They couldn't even get out of Da Nang yet. But anyway, and they started calling from the ground. We got a problem. We are in a fire. We got to get out of here. I said, oh, okay, there's the other part of our job. Get them out. So if that happens and they call for it and they declare a prairie fire, then I can declare a prairie fire from the air, and I can have anything airborne available. What's going to be available in bad weather? Nothing. Da Nang was closed. And so anyway, so we get there, and I said, I don't know where you are. They told me about where they were, but they were in the jungle. I said, you're going to have to blow a flare up and let me see where you are so I can help you get out of there. So they did, and I knew where they were. I said, where are the bad guys? They're right here off to the west about 1,000 yards or a click or two. To me, a click's 1,000. 1,000 meters is 1,000 yards, roughly. Same thing. And so if something's 2 clicks away, it's 2,000 feet away. Anyway, so I said, okay, tell me where they are. And he says, and the main guy says, down the ground, he says, we got to clear out a spot for the choppers to get in here. I said, yeah, I know. I've already called them. So I called up. I knew there was 32 guys on the ground. So I needed 6 choppers just to get 6 on a chopper back. And I started firing into the bad guys. And I said, okay, how close was that? Not close enough. So they wanted me to move in closer to them. You really have to be careful, because you don't want to hit your own guys on the ground, but you want to slow down the bad guys.
And like the guys on the ground have somewhat of an idea how close they are to the enemy,
well, yeah,
or
they've
did
been
they
fighting them? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so they know.
Right.
Yeah, they know in what direction they are, so they tell me. And so I go into the second one. I get a little bit closer to them, and they say, "Yeah, you're right on. You're right on." So I'm hitting the enemy right, and they're still fighting. Now their main job is to clear out an area. So while we're doing this, they said, every time you fly just right to the west of where you just went by, they're really shooting at you now. I said, okay, I won't go that way anymore. Come around the other way and go. Anyway, so we're getting concerned about the choppers getting out. So finally they get out there. And they've blown out an area for them to come in and get them. They're not going to be able to land, but they could get something close to them. So the first chopper comes in and drops 6 ladders down, so they can get 6 guys on the ladder, 1 on each ladder, and pull them out of there. Well, he catches one of the ladders on a tree, the chopper does, and goes in upside down.
Oh, wow.
Now I've got 30 or 40 meters away from this spot. I've got this crashed helicopter pilot, a crew of 4.
Did you see it happen, or did you just hear it on? Wow.
Yep. Now I got this one to worry about, and this group, and we're all getting low on gas. So the team on the ground has to get to the chopper to rescue these guys, because nobody got killed. They got a couple of injuries, but nobody got killed. But now they got to go back and put them with the team to get them all out. And I said, well, we can't stick around for another couple of hours without some fuel. And I've used almost all my ammo. I was shooting smoke rockets into it because that's all I had.
They're like,
so I said, okay, go back and send me 6 more. And I'll go back to Quang Tri, because we were close enough to Quang Tri. And I go back and I call Barkey on Quang Tri, and I said, I'm coming in and I need a couple of things. I need fuel, and I need 7.62, 2,000 rounds, both sponsors filled. I need all the HEs you can give me into my pods, and you can give me some Willie Pete's, where there's some Willie Pete's in there, you can fill those too, so I know what I have. And I said, but I'm not going to be on the ground very long, so I have to have it all done at once, which you're not supposed to do. So I got a taxi in there, and I taxi right up to the armor, shut them down. You have to shut them down. Of course, you can't get into my sponsors without getting chopped up. So I get spun down. So they're putting bullets into my sponsors, and another one's putting rockets into my rocket pods, and a guy in the back over here is filling my belly tank full of fuel. I'm on the ground 15 minutes, and I've completely fueled and re-armored my airplane. And I close the cockpit, and I get off the ground 15 minutes later. I go out, and I come up on the helicopters that come out, 6 different helicopters coming back down. And I pass them up and say, come on, guys, we're almost there. So I get out there, and so I'm directing them over to the crash site now for the other chopper. And the team on the ground says they have the choppers, they have the chopper pilots ready to go. So this time the chopper comes in and drops 6 ropes.
because they were like, we're not taking our chances with the ladder anymore.
The ladders are out. So one guy clips on each rope, and the chopper picks it up with 6 guys on there and flies over here, hanging on there, over to Quezon, which is an old abandoned airstrip that's halfway to Quang Tri and the border back. While he's doing that, the second one comes in, picks up 6 more guys, till they get all 36 guys. And then after they drop them on the ground there at Quezon, then they land the chopper, and they all jump in the chopper and then take off. So then they're not hauling them through the air anymore. And they all get back to Quang Tri before I get back, of course. And so I get all done, I get them all on there, and my relief shows up. Finally, Evan Quiros, one of my guys that works for me, shows up and says, what do you need done? I said, not much. He says, well, I brought 6 SPADs with me, which are the A1s with bombs and stuff. I said, see this area down here where the chopper is and all this around here? I want that completely obliterated.
Right.
See ya. And I was out of there because I was getting out of low on gas again. So I left him that, and saw him at the last reunion last October in Fort Walton Beach. He didn't come up to me direct first. His son came up to me direct and said, thank you, Major Bob. I didn't matter, I was a colonel. He says, thank you, Major Bob, keeping my dad alive in Vietnam. And then Evan came up later and saw me. We talked. They looked identical. He and his son, the same growth, beard, and everything, identical. And so that's the last time I saw Evan, was last October. But anyway, got all those guys out, and that was my biggest job I ever had over there. 36 guys out. So I got back to the base. Of course, now it's 9:30 at night. 9 o'clock when I got back, because I had to drop Satan off to there, and I landed on the ground. As soon as I landed, they said the MACV headquarters, the military Green Beret guys wanted to see you. So they had a guy in a Jeep there, and they take me back to the MACV headquarters, which was hidden in the jungle there or someplace. And a guy runs up to me, a sergeant that was on the team. So still got camouflage all over him, and part of his backpack on him and stuff. He just runs up to me, and in the service, enlisted people can't call officers by their first name, theoretically. They can call them by their rank and their last name, supposedly it's supposed to be. But I've been working with these Green Beret guys, and they knew me as Major Bob. They knew I was a major, and I went by Bob, and they knew me as Major Bob, so they could get away with calling me Major Bob, which didn't bother me at all. And back in the jungle, well, who cared? But he runs up to me, grabs my hand with both his hands, and says, "Thank you, Major Bob. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here." I said, "Okay, you got it." It's hard for me to even talk about relaying that, but so then he went back, and they were all alive. Some were in the hospital. That's why the officers weren't there then. So I got back in my airplane then, said goodbye to Satan. I'd see him next time, and I had to fly back to Da Nang, which is another 30 minutes up the coast in the dark. But and flying in the dark is scarier than the daytime, because you can see flares and stuff going off in the inland. But you're flying right along the coast over the water, so nobody's going to shoot you from the water. But it takes so in the Gulf of Tonkin there, and the ships are out there. And I get back to the base and land the airplane. It's about 9:30. I taxi up, and my boss is there with a Jeep, which he never did before or never did after. Ever picked me up at my airplane. He always walked back to the squadron, and went to the squadron, and went back to your hooch. He said, "I thought you might be a little tired. Heard you had a rough one out there." And I said, "Yeah." We went back to the room, and our hooch, which we shared, bedroom in each end, and a air conditioner in each end, and a bathroom in the middle. And he says, "You want a drink?" And I said, "Of course." So he fixes me a drink while I get my boots off.
Scotch, right? Scotch.
Scotch and water.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a couple ice cubes in there. And we both had refrigerators in our rooms. So I sat on the edge of my bed, got my boots off, and I just sat down, and he hands me the drink. I don't know if you know how to fly an OB-10, but it's a stick. And on top of the stick is the very top is your trim button, which you try to keep it trimmed up. And right next to it is your pickle button, which shoots your rockets. And in front of all of that is your trigger switch, which shoots the bullets out of your guns. And then so you're flying for a while. How many hours? I was flying 12 hours or 14 hours or 15 hours. And you're flying with your right hand, that stick is on that stick the whole time, and the radio switches are over here on your throttle. So anyway, he hands me the drink. I can't even grip the glass in my hand with one hand. I have to use both hands. Take a sip out of the drink, and I set it down. The drink was still there in the morning. The ice had melted. And I dumped it out. But I mean, that was my biggest single mission that I did in Vietnam. And about 6 months later, I'm in England. What was my new assignment after we got out of Vietnam?
Real quick, do you like when a war's going on? Do you guys like get days off? Like, do you get like a day off ever? Or?
You know what I did as a commander of my flight, my small flight and the big flight on my day off? I sat with a pen and paper and wrote their effectiveness reports.
Damn.
Somebody had to write mine, but I had to write theirs. And it was either that or in the evening, if I was free, I would write a letter home. My wife, at the time, I was in Vietnam, my first wife, wrote me a letter every night I was there. I didn't get them every night, but I got them every week or so. I'd get 3 or 4 letters at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'd get a letter a week after the first letter was written. A week later, whatever the problem was with the car or something was solved by the time I got the next letter, or the 5 days later. Other than that, was just going on. The kids are doing stuff because they're teenagers now. Yeah, but days off were, there were days when you didn't have much to do, maybe, but you always had something to do, it
Right.
seemed like. And you're there. Yeah, I had an R&R in, I would think it was October of 70, where I made arrangements to do, and if you want to go to Hawaii on R&R, it was free.
Oh,
They would fly you on an Air Force plane, usually one from the medics would fly, and you could get special deals for your family or your wife or whatever to fly over and meet you there, and we did that. And then you stayed at a hotel you picked out and paid for, and then you go first, before you left, though, you have to go over to American Express Bank and cash a check to get some real money.
oh, right.
And you couldn't get real money, spend it, because you couldn't use green money in Vietnam.
Right.
You had to use script. But you could get green money if you were going on R&R or going home or going whatever you're doing. So I did that, and that was a week, almost a week off, 5 or 6 days off. But other than that, if you didn't have, you had something you had to do. It just seemed like you
Right.
had to stay busy just to get through another day.
The,
But you flew 3 or 4 times a week,
right. When was the time that you were getting shot at when you were taking flak? But we can get to it. I got to take a piss,
Okay,
and we'll just pause real fast, and we'll come back to it.
all right.
Are we live? All right, we're back. I'm back.
Okay, when I first got there, as a fact, I think I told you, one of our jobs was to go out, and if we found a target, call for help, or we were assigned a target and had to call for bombs. So one day I was out there. It was funny. I had been there, I don't know, a couple of months, and a good friend of mine, Sonny Haynes, and another one, Bill Bruner, who was senior to us, senior being he'd been there longer. We were known as 3 of the best pilots there in the Covey outfit, and our flight surgeon, Boxy, which is Vietnamese for doctor, and so that's what we called him, Boxy. He showed up to my plane that morning and said, "You're one of the 3 I'm allowed to fly with, Bill and Sonny." I said, "Okay." So they had to fly a couple of times a month to stay flight proficient like everybody else, because he was a flight surgeon. He was our flight surgeon, took care of us. So I said, okay. He hadn't flown with me before, but he was going to fly with me today, because he only trusted 3 pilots. And that's just because we were more experienced, I think, than anything else. But so he had this big camera with him, and a big Nikon, I think it was. And I said, "Oh, you're going to take some pictures?" He says, "Well, I thought I would, because we weren't assigned anything. It's just out to another VR mission." So he climbs in the back seat, and he'd been there before, and so I get in the back seat, and we get out there, and we're flying around. We're flying around for a couple of hours, looking here and looking there and looking, and not seeing much. And so we were headed back over towards where we headed back to Nang. And I'm looking around, and I says, "Did you see that?" And he says, "What?" I says, "It looked like a camouflaged area over here, like a in between the trees. There's some kind of camouflage tree. It just looks strange to me." So I went around, and I came back around the other way, and it even looked more camouflaged. Something was hiding there. So I was off in the distance a little ways, and I called in, and I said, "Do we have any?" So I looked at my map and coordinated. You could still figure out what the coordinates were. I called them in. I called the sky birds or whatever they were called. I said, I think I found a camouflaged area. Do we have anything in this area?" And they looked up and says, "No, we don't have anything, that we're camouflaging anything." They said, "Do you see something?" I said, "Yeah, it seems kind of strange. So we don't have anything. Do you know of anything that's supposed to be in this area? Any guns or anything?" It was close to a river. There was a close by river and stuff, so you could trail and stuff. And he said, "No, we don't know of anything there. If you found something, we'll gladly send you some bombs." I said, "Well, if we don't have anything there, and we don't know of anything there, and you don't know of any guns or anything?" "No, nothing we know of." I said, "Okay, send me. I think I have something. I need some ordnance." I said, "Okay, we'll send it to you." So we're flying around, just waiting around. And then I knew where the target was. All of a sudden, this airplanes show up, 3 Navy F-4s and 4 Air Force F-4s, all loaded with 500-pound bombs. And they're up there. 20,000 feet are the Navy pilots, and 25,000 feet is the Air Force pilots. I said, "I don't know what we have down here, but it looks like we have something that's not supposed to be there, naturally." And they said, "Okay, you mark it." And I said, "Okay." So I get around, and they have me in sight, and they see me, and I'm going around here, and I load up, and I come up on my target that I see. And just as I'm coming down, I'm going in for my strike. I said, "It's right on my nose." And just as I'm firing my smoke rockets into the target area becomes artillery, anti-aircraft guns. I said, "Wow, have you ever seen a World War II movie where the flak's going off and all?" That's exactly what it looks like, for real. And I'm going like, "Oh shit, I really found something here." I said, so I pull out of there. I had to get out of there. I can drink faster than any aircraft guns can move. I said, "Did you see that?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Did you see where my smoke went?" They said, "No, I didn't see your smoke, but I saw the smoke from the gun. I can go in on that." I said, "You got it." And so I saw him, he saw me, and the first Navy flight's coming in, and lead says, I have the smoke from the gun." I said, "You put it in hot." And he hits the camouflaged area, which is right next to where the gun was. I says, "Okay, you're about 500 meters off to the left." And number 2 says, "Yeah, I see that." He says, "But I see where the gun was too." So he comes in right behind him and hits the gun. Well, then that stopped all of that gunpowder stuff coming from the ground. So I put in the third Navy guy in. He comes in, and it's in between. Now we found some area that they were camouflaging trucks or gas or whatever. So they finish. I give them their BDA, which is their bomb damage assessment. And I said, you Air Force guys ready to go?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, we can destroy the rest of this area here. It's obviously not ours, and it's bad guy stuff, whatever it is." And the Air Force guy comes back, and he says, "Yeah," he says, "I hear you getting a little excited down there a few minutes ago." I said, "Yeah, I was getting a little excited." I said, "I never had that many guns open up, that fire, that many." Anyway, So they came in and destroyed the rest of it, and I gave them their BDA, and by then we're headed back to Da Nang. So I don't know what we actually destroyed other than because everything's burning now, and the guns are gone and are blown away. And so I said, okay, Boxy, we're back headed towards the base. I said, Boxy, did you get any good pictures of that? He said, nope. I said, did you get any pictures at all? He said, nope. I said, why not? He said, did you ever try to pick up a 400-pound camera? Because he had it in his lap.
Oh, right.
And I pulled so many G's getting out of there. And I kept steady, getting around it and getting out of there. He said, I didn't have a chance to even lift the thing off my lap.
Wow.
I said, well, at least you're a witness of what happened. He says, yeah, I was. And we both came out of that okay. So that was probably the closest I came to getting blown out of the sky. But it did take a hit, and I didn't know it. On my left sponson, when I got back out to Da Nang, of course you didn't feel it get hit, and I didn't take a direct hit, or I wouldn't be talking to you right now. But got back on the ground and pulled up to the armor to put the pins in, the guns and stuff. And he said, did you know you got a bunch of holes here on the left sponson? I said, what's that? So after I shut it down and everything, I walked out there and looked at it. We counted 23 holes in the spot, little holes. I think it was probably more flying through the shrapnel than it was actually having a direct hit, because a direct hit would have blown me out of the sky. But don't know what it was. But that was the closest I came, I guess.
Before I forget, there was a time, I think was it you that was telling me about how, and this is kind of like random from what we're talking about now, but I think you were telling me like when you guys would go to like the bars and like slide somebody down the bar.
Oh, do GCAs on the bar?
Yeah, GCA.
But a GCA is a ground controlled approach.
Right.
And there's two of them.
And where did this take place at?
There's the GCAs, which are done in airplanes with ground controlled approach,
right,
and ILS, which is an instrument landing approach system. Those are the two ways you get through the weather and get on the ground. If you start at one end of the bar and you run up to the bar and you jump on it and slide on your stomach all the way down, if you can make it all the way to the end of the bar, you're doing a GCA. You're doing a ground approach, controlled approach to the bar. And first off, you don't want to do these. I mean, but sometimes somebody gets a little bit too much of the bar in them, and somebody bets somebody else or something, and they do it. And it's funny when somebody's doing it, and if there's glasses on the bar, and ice and drinks and everything, and a GCA can clear it all off and spill it all over, break glasses and bottles, and so the bartenders don't like you to do that too much, because
what bars was that going on at?
Well, any bar you go to over in that area,
right?
Philippines, or I guess they did a lot in the Philippines, but the ones that were the best were the ones done in the Officers Club at Da Nang, right there, because you'd be there and you said, "Uh-oh, GCA," and if you were standing at the bar, you backed up and see who was going.
Some guy would come through in his underwear.
Well, that happened, and it was the first time he'd ever been drunk.
Yes.
Young fact. And I guess he wanted to be one of the boys, and he did it. And he just took his flight suit off and did it in his underwear. And then he was so embarrassed, he had to have somebody help him get his flight suit back on and get back to the barracks. And he was embarrassed for 3 days about that. He was a young guy. He was in his 20s, probably 21, 22 years old, and had never been in anything like that. Been in college for 4 years or whatever, and gone to flight school. And some guys go to flight school while they're in college, or if they're in ROTC, that's part of their job training is in flight school. And they never were a drinker maybe before they got there, and then they started that.
Yeah.
you know,
That's so funny.
some of us older ones didn't do GCAs. We encouraged people to do them sometimes and
Right.
laughed at them and watched them do it, but it wasn't very well liked by the bartenders because they had to clean it all up and spill all the spills and everything. And usually the bartenders, most of them in Vietnam were Vietnamese women, and the waitresses and everything, and they were hired because they were Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them said good. Some of them talked English, and some of them thought they talked English, and they didn't talk. We had waitresses that some were nice, good looking, clean cut, and others. One of the best waitress there was clean cut and everything, but she had an odor around her that was so bad that you knew that Stinky was around somewhere. You'd want to know, what do you want tonight? Well, I'll have some chicken with no hob. No hob was their favorite saying, which meant they didn't have it, whatever it was you wanted. That's why I went hungry half the time over there. That's why you drank. The only thing you had.
Yeah.
Scotch and water with ice cubes.
That's crazy. So, you got like an award, right? You got another.
From which one? Well, I got a lot of them. Well, I got a Distinguished Flying Cross from that mission that I did with the 36 guys on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That I did
When the helicopter flipped over and everything?
Yeah, that mission. I got that when I was in England 6 months later. And the only reason I know it was that one because of the date on the certificate is the date it actually happened. Because I did so many of them over there, it was the only one I got the DFC for. But because
The DFC,
Yeah.
I like that.
yeah, that's a good one.
That's cool. It's like a propeller too in there. Looks
Yeah,
like.
that's what it is.
That's cool. What other ones did you get?
Well, you got air medals for different things. Like the first time I went over there in '64, and we bombed the Philippines, the North Vietnam in January 12th, '65,
That's my birthday.
and that's
Well,
when,
not 1965, but
well, January 12th. Went over there in '64. Said you're going on a mission. Concerns the Vietnam. The Vietnam War hadn't started yet.
right.
It started in, if I'm not mistaken, it was June or July of '65 when we moved the Marines into Da Nang, and that's when the war was actually started. But before the war started, we're bombing the North,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on the first mission that we bombed North Vietnam was January 12th, 1965. Went over there in '64 and got briefed on it. There's a lot of stories about that trip, but went over there and got briefed on it in '64. So we went out in '65, and in a KC-135, which holds 180,000 pounds of fuel, almost ran out of fuel coming back to the Philippines.
Wow.
The lowest fuel I'd ever been in the airplane. It was so low that we had to use it all up for ourselves, and plus what we were given to the fighters. That if you try to leave the airplane parked without a tail jack, it would fall on its tail because we had to use all the forward gas tank.
Wow.
So we had to sit there and wait for them to bring a tail jack out. They knew we were coming. We got back to the Philippines. It was so far out there, and then we had to hold so long, and then so two of the 105s got shot down on the way out, and so they picked us, the only tanker crew out of the 5 or 6 that were involved in this thing. And the other, we don't even know where they were from, different pieces all around, and we were picked to go back the next day to refuel the fighters that were giving air support to the Jolly Greens to go in and get these guys out that got shot down in 105 the day before. So after the 2 days there, and then we came back, and there's other stories I could tell you about the trip, and who went on the trip, and friends of mine and stuff. But anyway, that was the first time we did anything against the North Vietnamese that the Air Force did, and yet the war hadn't even started yet. So I didn't even know I was in the war, but when we got back a couple of months later, we got an air medal, my first air medal, for January 13th, which was the day after we went back to fly we didn't get a medal for flying the first mission, and went back to flying the first air support for the rescue mission.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I got 14 of those. You want one?
Yeah, that's a sick medal. Was it like a eagle coming down with lightning bolts?
Yeah.
That's sick. Yeah, that's a really cool medal.
Yeah, I got those. I got prints of them. I don't even know where they all are. But you get them for different things. But later on, I was wearing it on my uniform, and I had 2 medals on. This is after the war got started. I went to a school in Alabama, and I was in my uniform walking down the sidewalk, and I think I was a captain, and another captain came up to me and says, "Wait a minute, where did you get that medal?" And he didn't point at the air medal. It was sitting right next to the soldier's medal. I says, "Well, I don't know where I got them." I knew what he was pointing at, and I knew what he was getting at. So I thought, well, I'll play along with it. Are you, joking or what? He says, "You can't have that medal. You're not allowed. You're not authorized to wear that medal." I said, "Well, what are you talking about? The air medal?" He says, "No, that one that's next to it." I said, "The soldier's medal?" Or he says, "That's the soldier's medal, and that can only be worn by enlisted people for just something they did."
Oh, that was the one that you... Okay.
It was the soldier's medal I got for rescuing that guy way back when I was doing rescue.
This one.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not very common. And like I said, I had that ribbon on, just like the ribbon there, on next to the soldier's medal ribbon, which is the 3 of them there together.
So he was jealous.
No, I was an officer, and
or he thought you were like...
I was an officer wearing an enlisted man's medal.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
You're not authorized to do that because only enlisted people can wear that medal.
Right.
I said, okay. He says, "I'm going to report you to the school authorities." I said, "Have at it." So he went in and told his boss that. So they looked up my record, and he says, his boss told him, he says, now you go back and find Denison, and you apologize for the mistake you made, and you tell him you're very sorry, and you learned a big lesson.
Yeah.
And so he did. He came and apologized to me.
That's good.
Because he...
Lots of discipline in the military.
Yeah.
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 Well, that guy deserved it.
Yeah.
That guy's a fucking asshole.
He was.
Like, who cares? So he was like trying to say you were... it was like stolen valor.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Yeah. Like, fuck you, guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny because that happened, and since then there's a few more medals, but I never got any. Well, I got too close to the Purple Heart, which is the one I never wanted. I even said when I went over there, I said, "I don't want a Purple Heart because most Purple Hearts are given to people posthumously after they got killed. So don't bother to give me one of those because I don't want to get killed." Joke about that, but so yeah, authorized the medal, and you're authorized the medal, and you want it, you wear it. I mean, there's people got medals for things they didn't deserve, and I don't know how many people didn't get medals for things they did deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
because somebody has to nominate you for a medal, right?
yeah, you have to be written up, and
So one of your commanders or captains or whoever has to like care about you and what happened enough to
somebody
nominate.
somewhere, like the squadron I was in the States, and the medals came in for our crew out of the blue. It surprised us. It was way after we got back from doing that Philippine. Well, we did that in January 12th, and I think we got the medal probably around May, you know. So somebody wrote up so many people in that mission in the Air Force someplace. And the one I got the DFC for getting that crew out, as a lot of people said, I should have been a higher medal than that. For that, I said, well, what, you know, who wrote that one up?
You don't know? They don't disclose?
It was theoretically, it was an Army unit I rescued. Was it an Army unit that wrote me up for it, or was it an Air Force unit that wrote me up for something I did for the Army? At that time, until about 92, about 20 years later, that time, Prairie Fire was not discussed, or what we did.
Right, it was all secret.
It was all top secret.
Nobody could
say. I couldn't talk about it till 92. I mean, I knew I got a medal for that mission, but maybe that's why I got the DFC, because you get a DFC for different things, but you weren't allowed to tell. When I came back, I couldn't tell my family what I did in Vietnam. I mean, I could tell them I was a FAC in Vietnam, but as soon as I got back, I spent less than 30 days in the States, and I was in England.
Right. What were you in England for after that?
Flying EC-135s.
Okay.
See, when they were trying to find me an assignment while I was in Vietnam, they didn't have me going back to KC-135s, but somebody I'd talked to before, who happened to be a colonel, lieutenant colonel or a colonel, I forget, that I'd asked that I wanted to get to Europe. And he told me the way to get to Europe was to get a year in country.
Mm-hmm.
So he remembered that when I called him, because when I talked to them from Vietnam, when you're talking to them in the afternoon in Texas, you're 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in Vietnam, and I didn't have an assignment. I didn't even have a DEROS coming out of there yet. So they said, well, we have your DEROS in August. I said, well, when I was there in January, how could you have me going home in August? That's a year and a half later. What happened was, the military writes their date different than we do in civilian life. What is today in civilian life?
Let's see here. I can't even think, honestly. Well, October 26th, 2025.
How would you write that down?
10/26/25.
Okay. 10/26/25 is month, day, year.
Mm-hmm.
Military writes it day, month, and year.
I think that's kind of how most other countries might write the date, honestly.
Yeah,
America always likes to do shit different, you know?
So they had me down as 8/1.
Oh, I see.
And that's the military way of doing it. And it was military writing, but somebody had it down as August or 8th of January.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I see.
8/1. And somebody looked at it and said, oh, he's not due till August 1st. So that's when they had it on there. I said, I wouldn't mind, but I said, that's a long time from now, which was more than, because you're supposed to have your new assignment within a couple of months of going back. So they said, well, we better find you a new assignment.
When you were in England, did you have any cool cars over there?
Any what?
Like cool cars? Did you buy any cars over there? What did you drive over there?
BMW.
Oh yeah? Which one?
Oh, I had a BMW. Was it a 17 or 16? 4-door sedan, right-hand drive.
What year would it have been?
71. It was a brand new 71 BMW. It was before the 2002 model. Because that's what
This is so cool. What color was that one?
white.
Right here?
That's it.
I guess this one is the 2002.
Well, it's the same car, almost identical. Now go to a red 2002 I bought it when I was there, and that's what I brought home. And I had it for years till my son wrecked it.
He wrecked it?
In 75, yeah.
Dang, how did he wreck it?
Ran into a tree.
It's always a tree.
Showing off to his girlfriend how fast it would go. And then it got to her place and the road turned.
Was it pretty quick?
Yeah, it ran straight. He totaled it,
Yeah.
which left me without a car.
It's always a tree. Like, those stories are always like, oh, he wrapped it around a tree.
Well, he wrapped the tree around him. Yeah.
Damn.
Because he hit a palm tree about the size of this table, about that big around.
So it was back in the States?
Yeah, this is.
You brought the car
I brought
back?
the 2000, the 71 white 1700 or whatever it was, which was the same, kind of the same model. That was an English right-hand drive, which I couldn't bring back. So when I got ready to come back, I bought automatic left-hand drive 2002 BMW because I liked the car so much. But it had to have US specs to it, you know.
Did it look like that? They all kind of look similar.
They
huh?
kind of looked all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But
So you just put it on a ship, or did it fit in a cargo
they have
container?
a plan when you're stationed over there. If you're going to buy a car, you know, you save quite a bit of money buying it over there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you set it up there to ship it back, and you drive it up to where they're going to ship it back, and somebody goes along with you, and you drop it off, pay them $600. This is back then. And then when they flew into McGuire from England, it was there already at McGuire, or outside the base of McGuire. The only thing I took out of it was the radio and the cigarette lighter, because those things always disappeared on the ships, I guess. And they didn't come with the car unless you had, ordered them. So when we got to McGuire, we landed, and I took the bags outside the terminal there, grabbed a taxi cab, which knew its way to the car terminal place, and they knew I was coming. Got the car. They said, "You're missing a couple of things." I said, I have the radio and the car lighter's in my pocket, and I put it in, and then
He's like, I know they're missing because I went to go steal them.
no, he said that's a problem they have. So and I got to the hotel we were staying at. I went back to the base, picked up the luggage and wife, and went back to the hotel, which is right outside the base, and checked it out, and everything was there. And they were concerned about the cigarette lighter and the radio, and because they knew that it came with a cigarette lighter, and I said, no, I got that. So then we drove it then to South Dakota, a couple of days trip. The thing that bothered me driving back to South Dakota in my new BMW was all the traffic was going my way. Nobody was coming from where I was going. I'd never been to South Dakota. and great place, really is. The squadron I was going to, EC-135. That's how. You ask how I got the assignment out of Vietnam. When I was flying KCs at March before I went to Vietnam, where I was flying. The EC model is a KC model that the only difference is they put a receptacle up here over the pilot's head where you could take fuel in and you could also give it away.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
So EC instead of KC, because it was a refueler, but it was EC was electronic, so you carried a battle staff in the back. The airborne command post over Omaha, Nebraska, have been flying for years. They don't have it anymore, but they flew for years. Was always in case of, well, I was flying the Cold War, is what we were doing. And if we ever went to war, they already had somebody airborne up there that could control. Because so that when I went to South Dakota, I went to ECs, because that's what I was flying out of England. When I was asking for an assignment back to the States, and a DERO, so we know what date I was going, they were working on that. They said, well, we got you an assignment. We found out that you were EC qualified. In other words, to be EC qualified, you have to be receiver qualified, be able to fly a 135 up behind another 135 and take fuel on. That's the hardest, one of the hardest things you'll ever do.
I
is become
have to imagine, yeah.
EC qualified or receiver qualified. And I.
So you're flying underneath the other
Yeah, you're flying
plane.
up to him, yeah, and
Wow.
looking up and taking fuel on.
Is there a guy operating the boom?
Oh yeah, the boom operator.
And he's just like trying
Well,
to.
he flies it. He flies the boom.
He has little wings on it. I was looking at that. That's crazy.
Flies up and down, back and forth, and he has limits 15 degrees either side and limits of so many degrees up high and low in an envelope, a mental envelope, and the pilot has the same envelope so. Just let me get first. While I was flying KCs at March before I went to Vietnam, we had the ECs come down to 15th Air Force headquarters where we were, and a few of us got qualified in EC-135s because we had to go on a certain number of missions flying trailing wire, and I was an instructor already in the KC. Then I became an instructor in the EC. Then I went to Vietnam. I'm trying to find an assignment to go back, and they said, well, you're the receiver qualified, so we got you an assignment to Offutt Air Force Base, Omaha, Nebraska, flying RC-135s, which is actually a good assignment. It flies up on the borders and looks at all the bad guys for years. That's what they did. But I didn't particularly care for the RC or the squadron, and that doesn't get me my European assignment that I was looking for. So I was going to go to Offutt Air Force Base, and they were cutting orders for me to go to Offutt when I left Da Nang. Then they called me one day from Randolph and said, or the squadron clerk calls me and says, Major Denison, I don't know whether you know this or not, but they changed your orders. I don't know if they're going to be very happy about it, but they changed your orders from where you were going. I had already made going to be an RC-135, so that's okay. But I was saying, okay, don't do this, don't do that. Telling my wife, don't get a dog yet till we get there, or we can go ahead and think about getting a dog, and because we lost our dog when I was in Vietnam, she died. But anyway, there was a couple other things. Don't worry about furniture and stuff, and then I get this call, and they said, and the squadron clerk calls me and says, you have to. I said, well, what happened? They said they changed your assignment from Omaha, Nebraska to Mildenhall, England. I said, what do I have to do now? They said, you have to come down here and sign the papers. I said, it'll take me 10 minutes to get there because I didn't have transportation. But I got down there and I signed the papers. So now that's how I got my England assignment. Because I talked to this colonel again. I had talked to him and reminded him that that's why I was in Vietnam. And so they were nice enough to tell the major that he could go to England because they had EC-135s in England. They just started the squadron and they had KC pilots flying the mission, trying to upgrade them to EC qualified. And so I was already EC qualified, so I could go right there and be part of the squadron, which is what I did. And that's how I got that assignment to England. So I showed up in squadron and Gene Raptor says, I'll take you on your first flight, after Vietnam, because I know they changed the instrument system while you were over there from F1 to F3 or something, and which wasn't any different. It was actually easier to fly the instruments. And we go out on the first flight. He says, and here's what we do now in the squadron in ECs. We meet up with a tanker and we practice this. And he says, I'm trying to teach all the rest of the pilots here. They've got people coming in from Castle to teach, and he says, I have to check them out. I said, okay. So we go up there and we're flying along, and he goes in, he says, this is how we do this, and he goes up and he flies up behind the tanker and hooks up and takes his 4,000 pounds off and revealing and runs the limits and everything. He says he backs off and back in the observation position, and I'm sitting there going, okay. And he says, would you like to try it to see how close you can get to the hookup? I said, sure. So I go up and I get back in position, get observation position, and stand by and go up, get up, hook up. I said, did you want me to run the limits too? He goes, you've done this before. I said, why do you fucking think I'm here?
Right.
He was the chief standboard of the wing, chief EC pilot, chief standboard of the whole wing of the Mildenhall wing, flying wing, all the airplanes with ECs and everything else. Became a good friend of mine. Lived across the street from me in the base housing. Went to a lot of parties. Anyway, came time, a couple of years later, came time for him to go back. So who's going to replace you? They said in the wing headquarters. He said, that one. Mm-hmm. He's the most qualified EC pilot you got out there. So I became the wing EC pilot, the wing standboard pilot. I was supposed to be able to give a check ride to anybody flying whatever kind of airplane you were flying, which was mainly the only thing that was stationed there full time was the ECs and T4s and T this and that, and the 130s that came in on TDYs. But that's, had I known about the EC outfit in England before I went to Vietnam, I might have worked out a thing there. They were still training them when I got there. EC's how to be receiver qualified. So he said, now I got a second instructor help me out. That's how we got to be, how I surprised him, because that's what I was doing before I went to Vietnam, flying the OP-10. But anyway, so that's kind of how we got into that. And so when it came time for me to go back, they said, you're going back to be the operations officer of a squadron in South Dakota, which was one of the only EC outfits in the States. It was the biggest one because it was close to Omaha, and we used to substitute the airborne command posts when they weathered out. We had to do 2 a month, I think, in the squadron, and for a long time, the only 2 available EC qualified, airborne qualified pilots that were there were Cliff Jackson and I. I was his deputy squadron commander. I just saw them a while back. His birthday's next month. Mm-hmm. 11th, 23, November 23rd, the day Kennedy was shot.
Yeah. Some would argue that was the day America changed forever and hasn't gone back to pre-Kennedy shot.
And I knew, after I met him, found his birthday was the same birthday as my wife's. First wife was 11/23. That's why I always remember it was the day Kennedy was shot. Cliff Jackson's birthday's that day, so I have to call him on the 23rd of November and wish him a happy birthday, because he called me on the 9th of October.
I'm sure
90th.
You probably would have never went to Vietnam had Kennedy not been shot.
Don't know. Don't know. But maybe not. But
because he didn't provide air support for whatever attack that was, and that a lot of vets were mad at him for that. I know.
Yeah, it was the madness of Vietnam, and had we had the same type of president when this thing, we could have got into it really big at Afghanistan, and we still might, but I don't think Afghanistan or Iraq are involved anymore. But I think,
Well, I mean, fucking Biden left all the artillery over there.
well, he did a lot of bad things, so
Yeah.
I won't get into that.
Right.
But anyway, so that's how I got into the Vietnam War, was because I was Air Force pilot, and that's what you did. And
Yeah.
you had to go to combat. You had to go to combat. And I actually, when I was flying the OV-10 in Vietnam as a Prairie Fire FAC, as a commander of Prairie Fire outfit there, and my whole little outfit, I had to feel afterwards that it was the best job I ever had in my life. It still is the best job I ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what I've done. It was the most satisfying, probably most dangerous job I had, but I never thought about it that way. Even when I was doing it, I didn't think of it being as dangerous. And it probably wasn't as dangerous as being a regular FAC, but in some ways it was more dangerous because we lost more Prairie Fire FACs than we did other FACs, but because we did things that they didn't do, like getting them in and getting them out of tight spaces, and the secrecy. In fact, in Pahrump there's a gunnery range out there, and they named it Prairie Fire after, it says in the thing when it opened up, just before we moved in there, that Prairie Fire was named after top secret operations in Vietnam.
Interesting.
And I said, yeah, I've heard about that.
That's pretty cool.
I called him and said, I was a Prairie Fire commander in Vietnam. Who could I talk to about that? Maybe you're getting ready to have for a big ceremony or something. They never called me back. Never even talked to me. Never. Then they didn't go through with some of the things they were supposed to. But I've never been out there, so I figured I'd go out there sometime, maybe go out there and shoot
Yeah.
my 380, but anyway, that was the Vietnam War was not a war. I don't know how much of this you want to keep, but the Vietnam War was a civil war between North and South Vietnam, and that's what it was. And it really was called the Southeast Asia conflict, because Thailand wouldn't take either side, but it did take our side. Laos, where most of the battles were fought in the air, were out of Laos, some in North Vietnam, very few in South Vietnam. Well, some in there. But crossing from north to south, all of that was done in Laos. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was all done through Laos. The 5 entrances. So a lot of the battles that were flown on the ground between our Marines and their bad guys were flown or were done in Laos, and they always stayed neutral. They didn't get involved with either one. So it should have been the Battle of Laos, it's called. But that's why it was just a conflict. It was in Southeast Asia. It was everybody was involved in it, but only two sides were really after one after the other.
A lot of Americans died over there for seems like no reason.
59,000.
Yeah, fucking crazy.
Yeah,
All because LBJ just didn't want to look weak or something. I don't know. Wild.
We had
Crazy.
a couple of bad politicians involved. I don't want to name any names, but I have a few of my favorite assholes, if you want to call them that,
Right.
in the world.
Well, there's no shortage of those people, unfortunately. But yeah, we can wrap it up if you're feeling like
don't know what
you
else
got
you
every. I don't know. It's kind of up to you.
Well, the Vietnam War was part of my Air Force journey, but 24 years, Vietnam was a big part of it to a certain extent. But a lot of things I did were not.
Right. Do you feel like the Vietnam War, like, kind of, like, that's what you're mainly known for? But is that what you would want to be mainly known for, or what? You know.
I went into the Air Force to do a job, and I was doing rescue and survival and rescue, teaching it and working it, and I wasn't that unhappy with my job, but I just wanted, if I'm going to be going to stay longer, you like your job, then you want to go as high as you can. So that's why I went to OCS, not just to fly airplanes, but while I'm going to go through OCS, if I get to be an officer, then that's what I'd like to do, because I don't really have a job in the Air Force after getting out, because you can't be a officer survival instructor, working in classrooms and stuff. You can be a commander of an outfit, I suppose, but I wanted to fly airplanes and do something. And
What was your original goal? Like, how many years was your goal?
well, the minimum was 4 years.
Right. And then you ended up spending how many years?
24.
Yeah. So
But
you kind of overshot the 4 year
Well,
mark.
the 4-year market, by the time I decided I was going to stay longer, was medical reasons for my son, but and I was going to be in there longer than 4 years, take advantage of certain things, and so if I'm going to be longer than 4, how much longer? 6, 8, then where will I be? So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to stay longer, let's see how I can go.
Mm-hmm.
When I retired as lieutenant colonel, I didn't have to retire. But I was converting the Pittsburgh National Guard from KC-97s, old 97s, to 135s as a chief pilot, to make sure that their squadron was, or their wing, really. I worked for a general there, and it was a good 2-year job I had, and I did it, and I liked doing it there, and I liked being there. I didn't particularly care for Pittsburgh, especially when you're from San Diego, California.
Right.
A lot of snow in South Dakota, and a lot of snow in Pittsburgh, and a lot of good things at both places. But my job was really kind of done, but the assignment was for up to 4 years, and I could have stayed another 2 years there. But the general I worked for, when I told him I was going to retire and I put my papers in, he was a National Guard general, and he told me then something. He says, "You're doing such a good job here, Bob." He says, "If you stayed another couple of years doing this, you probably make full colonel." And I spoke to him then, "Why didn't you tell me that before I put my papers in?" kind of thing. And I was never sorry I got out, but I was kind of regretted sometimes, maybe staying another couple of years. I might have been a full colonel, but the job I was doing wasn't doing anything for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what started the retirement. You were just kind of like burnt out on it.
I was there. I mean, if I'd gotten a job maybe that I really liked and it was going forward, and maybe I would want to stay and be a full colonel. And, I mean, that's a big deal, but I was kind of tired of what I was doing, and I had done it all. I had the whole wing converted over, and I was more of a monitoring job, that they were still doing it right and going on rides with them. And I was still able, but I wasn't being able to fly as much either, because the flying was done by them. I was doing more checking on their flying. And maybe that was silly, but anyway, so I just said, nah, time to go back home to San Diego and get out of the snow. And so I went back there, and then, that was kind of like the reason I retired, was not because I had to, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Do something else.
Yeah.
Which I did. And I'm still doing it, I guess, which is getting older. And not going to be much longer.
What does that feel like when you say, like, not much longer like that?
Well, how old can you be?
Right. But what's it feel like to be at the end?
The end? I sometimes feel like I'm not ready for it. Mentally, I'm not ready to quit. But every year it gets a little bit tougher to do this or do that, or get up and down and walk, and your body doesn't keep up with you sometimes. And most people, it doesn't even keep up with you long enough to get to where I am.
Right.
So I feel like I still want to do some things, but it's sometimes it's so painful to do it that you say, why am I doing this anymore? But
right.
But I got too many people involved in my life that I don't necessarily want to leave them, but I don't want to be a burden to them either. But so I'm kind of like, I'm okay. I don't know how long it's going to be. Sometimes when you get sick, really sick or something, then you kind of like, is this the way it happens? Is this the way you go?
Yeah.
And then you get to feeling better and you feel fine. Yeah, I'll have another drink. I don't do much of that.
Do you, are you a faithful man at all, religious at all? Do you think there's something after all this?
Not really, but I don't know. I don't feel that God's up there waiting for me to go do something. That I don't necessarily believe that there's people that I know, like my first wife or my kids that I've lost or anything, that they're waiting to see me when I get there, take up old times. I don't think that's real, but then I don't know. It might be, but do I have faith in God? Sometimes I do, and so I probably have. I have faith in faith.
Yeah, fate. Yeah.
And what's going to happen? It's going to happen. If I get up, if I pass away, and get up, and I go to heaven or wherever I go, I sometimes think I might not make it up there. But
everybody says that.
But what is there? What is there in the hereafter? It makes me think. Yeah, you should. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? And what is a good guy? And what is a bad guy? A good guy is somebody who doesn't do certain things. Like, he doesn't murder people. He doesn't beat up the opposite. He doesn't beat up women. He doesn't be mean to wives. He doesn't beat up his kids. He doesn't, he doesn't kidnap kids or do all the things you think of bad people really do.
Right.
But is that faith by not doing it? Or is it faith, or is faith just thinking about doing it or not doing it? I mean, I never had the desire to do all these things you hear people doing all the time. Does that make me a good guy or a bad guy? I mean, does it give me a certain amount of badness because I would never do it myself, and I don't even think I would want to do it. What makes them do it? And how could I turn them around to be a good person? Or is that the difference between being bad or good? Or is being bad just doing it? Or is being bad thinking about doing it or want to do it? I think about it when I hear about some of these horror stories. I think, how could anybody ever do that? I would never want to do that.
Right.
Does that make me good? Or does that make me...
I think, yeah, morals, you know?
Yeah.
Like if, a bad thought might cross your mind, like, oh, fuck this guy on the freeway, I'm going to swerve him off. And you're not going to do it.
Yeah,
But
I don't
some
even think
evil...
about doing it. Yeah,
right.
That's it. I say, how can these people think about, oh, he pissed me off, so I'm going to kill him or kill his kids or do something really bad? How does he even get that thought?
I don't know. And then that also brings on another question. Like, if God is like this figure, and wouldn't he be in charge of that person having those thoughts too?
Yeah, you would think so. That's why I'm saying if you had those thoughts, then you don't have God in you,
right?
Or Jesus, or whatever you want. I don't know that I mean, I'd like to think of...
What is your ideal afterlife? Like, what would you, if you were to like build your heaven, what does your heaven look like? Flying? Is that...
Yeah, I would love to be able to go back flying, doing something you want to do, watching TV, I mean, certain things you stay in bed longer. Or
I think the TV is like the devil, though, so I don't know if you're going to find a TV in heaven.
I think the TV is I don't think the TV is that bad. The TV is a repeat of something. The thing I think is bad is the computer, the Facebook and things like that. I think they're bad.
The social interaction.
Yeah, social interaction.
The virtual social interaction.
The computer itself is good. Well, I use it to pay my bills and to keep track of things, but I don't use it for entertainment or if I want to order something, I think Amazon and the TV is good because I can order something and have it here tomorrow.
Yeah, you don't have to rummage through the phone book anymore.
Yeah, I don't have to try to look up something, although I miss doing that. But I think the biggest thing about the computer for me is being able to just, okay, it's time to pay the bills first of the month, and just go there and do my bill pay a few bills.
It does make things easier. I mean, the convenience factor is there.
But I didn't get my first computer till before I met Karen. Probably, I'm trying to think about, 93, probably about 90 or in the 80s, I thought one of the biggest thrills I had in my life was when I was in England in the 70s, 74, 75. Went to the BX, they just got in their first shipment of calculators, little hand calculators. What I saw you could do with a calculator, the math you could do with that, just that one little thing. You didn't need a calculating machine. You could carry this calculator around with you, or have it by your desk, or have it home. I thought that was great. Now the computer's supposed to be 10 times the calculator, but the computer does a lot of things that the calculator never could do. And I still have a calculator, desk calculator, by my desk, because how do you keep track of your money without a calculator?
Right. I think a lot of people probably leave it up to somebody else to keep track of their money, and that's probably where a lot of the problems lie in society.
Well, I guess. I know Karen can spend my money real fast.
Somebody's got to spend it.
Yeah. Somebody's got to keep track of it, too. and I do that. But I mean, sometimes she'll be, because she was on her own for so long with the kids and everything, and she go to the grocery store. I don't like to shop Albertsons over Walmart because they're too expensive. I said, Karen, we go into the shop to go shopping, and we might spend $100 at either place and get the same thing. But if you're worried about this kind of milk costs more at Albertsons because it's better because the Walmart's cheaper, I don't get that. In fact, I don't particularly care for Walmart.
Yeah,
So-
I stay away. I stay far away from Walmart.
Well, we don't have a choice where we live.
Oh
but,
yeah, that's true.
But we do have right next to it is Albertsons, and we have Smith. Oh, Smith's is way too expensive. To what? To buy donuts? To buy a loaf of bread?
Everything's expensive now.
I
It's,
know.
it's ridiculous.
It's the same. You're not saving that much money. She thinks buying an ice cream bar in the box is cheaper at Walmart than it is at Albertsons. It's not the same. It might be 10 cents cheaper to buy 100 bars of ice cream or something. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but
Well,
and I said, and then their deli department in Walmart is awful. There's nothing good comes out of there. But there does come out of Albertsons and Smith's, and she buys things at Costco because it's bulk,
right.
and that's what Walmart's supposed to be. Well, that's fine, bulk at Walmart, but most of the stuff that we buy bulk isn't at Walmart, and if it is, it's not just cheaper, it's just cheaper. It's just a piece of shit most of the time.
I'd rather pay the extra money to get
I
like
would.
quality.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The quality is so much better at Albertsons than it is at Walmart for anything.
Well, is there anything that you would like to record and leave for future family listeners? Any wise words?
The only thing I can think of is in your life, starting when you can start thinking about what you want to do, what you think you want to do, probably would be when you're young, in grammar school. If you want to be one of the ones that gets good grades, work harder. If you want to be in high school, if you want to be one that gets good grades, if you want to set a goal for yourself, wherever you go, set a goal, and then work there to get there. Then after you get there to your goal, what's your next goal? Set your next goal. Make your future. I thought when I was 7 years old that I wanted to fly. And I didn't understand why you had to have an airplane to fly, because I used to fly all the time. When I was 7 years old, I remember being 6, 7 years old in that age group, I would fly at night by myself without an airplane or anything else, fly around and look at people doing things and look at buildings and fly around. Of course, it was dreaming it. But I said, I wonder why other people can't fly like I do. I'd never seen anybody else flying. So I always wanted to fly. But I used to fly a kite all the time, and when I'd fly a kite, then I'd dream that night I was flying something else or flying by myself. And I probably realized that where we lived in Fresno, California, we were 1 block away from a poppy field. And I used to fly my kites running along through the poppy fields. And then I would fall down once in a while in the poppy fields. And I wonder if the poppies had something in them that they weren't supposed to have. They outlawed them in Fresno about the time we were leaving. They said some of this stuff it has opium in it, but
Right.
these poppies, they said you can't have opium poppies, but these aren't opium poppies. Bullshit! You can't grow a field of poppies and not have. I just wonder sometimes. Maybe it was the opium in the poppy fields that I was running through was making me think
That's
I could
really
fly.
interesting.
But,
Wow.
but I always wanted to fly, and so I ended up being a pilot. And people sometimes are amazed. You flew airplane, you flew in the Air Force, you flew in Vietnam. Yeah, because I always wanted to fly. Thought I could for a while without an airplane. Then I found out I had to have an airplane to fly with. It's like somebody says, "Oh, there's a helicopter flying over there." I got to tell them, helicopters don't fly. They can't. They don't have wings. You said, "Well, what do you mean they don't fly?" Well, they don't have wings. Find me a bird that flies that doesn't have wings. Fly me an airplane that flies that doesn't have wings. Helicopters hover. Up and down, sideways, they hover. They don't fly.
That's a good point.
You have to have wings to fly. Bees have to have wings to fly. Flies have to have wings to fly. Airplanes have to have wings to fly. So if you say you're going flying, you're not going flying on a helicopter. You're going to be going on a mission or a look-see, go tour something, but you're not flying. You might be up in the air. You might be going through the air. But the helicopter is hovering around for you to look out. You go to Hawaii, go to parts of Hawaii where they have all these helicopter tours to see all over. You go up in those, and those are fun. You get up there and look at a lot of places where they have tours. Go to Alaska and go on Alaska, that Land of Lakes tour that we always go on.
Run through a field of poppies.
Yeah. That's what you do, but then you get arrested.
All right, well, let's wrap this up.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
I've enjoyed talking to you, and thanks for being here and sharing your stories, and happy 90th birthday, and thank you for your service, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Perfect.